minutes after 10, and it's one of those mornings where I changed my mind about what we were going to talk about as I made my way down the stairs to the studio. I won't bore you with the details, but it's a slightly more convoluted journey than usual because of the building work that has been unfolding at Global Towers for what feels like a very, very long time, but I believe they're ahead of schedule. Anyway, you're not interested in that. So Keir Starmer has warned Andy Burnham against launching an immediate challenge to his leadership if he becomes an MP. And so Wes Streeting has essentially moved in the opposite direction by revealing that he is prepared to trigger a leadership election next week. And I realised something as I contemplated the possibility of talking about this today, as I sort of changed my mind as I made my way down the stairs. I realised something, and I'm a little bit reluctant to tell you, because it's kind of my job to have not just positions and opinions, but also the courage of my convictions, and, because I'm rare for a radio phone-in host, the evidence and the facts to back up whatever opinion it is that I'm sharing with you. And I have not been backwards in coming forwards over the last few years with my opinions of politicians, most of which have been negative, I suppose. It's a lot easier to arrive at a negative position than it is at a positive. But I don't know whether it's because I've started writing a newspaper column, and so you remember what you wrote last week, and you really note that now you are in a slightly different position from where you were before, even in the space of a week. Listen, I'll stop flanneling around, and I'll just tell you straight, shall I? I still can't make my mind up about Keir Starmer. I feel I should apologise to you for that. And I'm not entirely sure why this is. I think it's partly because he does relatively regularly something that I find quite impressive. I think the online safety stuff that he's done this week is really powerful, really important. You know he's getting something right when they're lining up lawyers from places like 4chan to start whining about how they don't know what they're talking about and they won't be able to do it. I'd rather they tried, lads. I'd rather they tried. What's the alternative? Just sit there and watch the country crumble. And of course, when you look at things like the Workers' Rights Bill and national living wage legislation, and there's quite a lot there to get your teeth into. We can all list the U-turns, we can all list the reverse ferrets, we can all argue about whether that was evidence of somebody listening and then changing their minds, or whether, as is my opinion, it was evidence of people not having really done the working out and the calculations before they announced the sum or the results. But I still, and I mean, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? And then, of course, you've got this curious affinity for stability. You know, the idea that 2 years into a premiership is ridiculously early to be calling time on it or concluding that it's a complete failure. And then you've got the thing that I think we touched on yesterday with that absolutely insane but incredibly widespread story about Keir Starmer, the arsonists who set fire to Keir Starmer's former home, being unpaid rent boys, angry over their outstanding bills. I don't know that I'm ever going to get over that story. I've written about it a bit in today's newspaper, if you want to have a look at where I am, because I can't believe that has happened to our country. Try explaining that to somebody who hasn't been paying attention. We did it a bit yesterday. Try explaining that line there that I just said, that there is a widespread conviction shared by people whose names you know, people who used to be vaguely respectable, well, maybe not respectable, but people who used to have proper jobs, shared by people whose names you know. There is a widespread conviction that Keir Starmer's arson attackers were unhappy male prostitutes, cross that he hadn't paid for their services. And Twitter in particular, but other social media as well, have become such insane places now that doesn't just get traction, it's halfway around the world before the truth has got its trousers on. Do you know, occasionally a story comes along that I feel I could talk about forever. A story comes along that so completely encapsulates the craziness that we've been living through now for 10 years, almost to the day. The anniversary's next week. The absolute craziness that we have been forced to live through. I find myself thinking we're never going to find a better example than this. We are never going to find a better example than this. It's absolutely incredible that people you know believe, because they saw it on socials, people you know believe that Keir Starmer was targeted by male prostitutes he hadn't paid. You see what I mean? Anyway, that's not even what the topic is today. It's just a mark of how mad everything has become. So a story like that comes along and you begin to understand, or you begin to appreciate precisely what it is that he is going through. And then you remember, we'll do a missed information later in the programme about the ponies on Dartmoor. That is one of the biggest piles of horse manure. You see what I did there? It's one of the biggest piles of horse manure that I've ever seen in the British media, and it's almost everywhere, that story. Spoiler alert, there won't be a major cull of Dartmoor ponies. In fact, there won't be any cull that is different to anything that's gone on before. You can take that to the bank if you want and sue me if I'm wrong. So you look at the abuse that he puts up with, the effort. I've always been baffled by the personal approval ratings, because my major criticism of Keir Starmer is that he's been a little bit too woolly. He's been a little bit too vanilla, if you like. He hasn't bashed enough heads together. He hasn't cracked enough eggs. He hasn't set off enough alarms. And yet his personal approval ratings are absolutely dire. Where does that come from? You know, he get a kicking for buying a field to let his disabled mother keep donkeys in it, and now he's getting a kicking over a cull of ponies that doesn't even exist. Do you like these creatures? Or do you not like these? Make your bloody mind up, will you? Because if you're really upset about the ponies, you should be giving him a knighthood for he's already got one for looking after the donkeys. And the madness. I guess what I'm saying, this is why I'm a bit embarrassed. I guess what I'm saying is I can't tell where the madness stops anymore and the story starts. How much of the disaffection with Keir Starmer has been carefully cultivated? And listen, I even wonder whether or not the Labour Party itself is disaffected with Keir Starmer due to a process of political osmosis. Whether or not they're looking at all the coverage and they're looking at all the social media activity and they are arriving at a conclusion. I really hope this isn't the case, because if it is, I think I'm guilty of it too. And they're arriving at the conclusion that Keir Starmer is a liability and he's got to go, which is, of course, the conclusion that has driven Andy Burnham's decision to surrender the mayoralty of Manchester and try to become an MP again. This widespread conviction, which I have been part of. 2 weeks ago, I wrote about how, by seeking to pander to reform, Keir Starmer had brought all of his current troubles upon himself. And I still think that's true. But I don't remember a politician about whom I found it so hard to arrive at a proper conclusion and stay there. Now, there could be some footballification involved. I absolutely admit to that. You can't invent a condition and then claim to be immune to it. There might be some footballification involved. It might well be the case. And of course, nobody can accuse me of blind loyalty or tribalism with regard to the Labour Party, because under the previous leader, well, you don't need me to tell you what would have happened if Jeremy Corbyn had ever become Prime Minister. He gave you a little sneak preview by the way in which he is conducting his current operation, which I think is called Your Party. So there is all the evidence you'll ever need of how fit for power he was. But I can clearly not be accused of footballification, because I was barely wearing a scarf at all under the last Labour leadership. But I do think, I do think that there's a possibility that all the noise, all of the criticism, not all of the criticism, obviously, but I suppose, to paraphrase, is it King Lear? I think, is Keir Starmer a man more sinned against than sinning? And when I hear him say that he doesn't think there should be a leadership election, He gives me proper pause. He makes me stop and think, why are we having one? Which we are almost bound to have. Why are we having one? I mean, it doesn't matter whether you are Ed Miliband or Jeremy Corbyn or Gordon Brown. Tony Blair was an exception to this rule for reasons that the older we get, the less happy we are with. It doesn't matter who you are as the leader of the Labour Party. The usual suspects will come after you with pitchforks. And as we discussed yesterday, if you're an online presence, because you can't get a job in traditional media, you have to say things that are much more obnoxious and much more dishonest than what the people with proper jobs say. So you have to sign up to the rent boy conspiracy theory or the great replacement theory or whatever nonsense it is that you're spouting this week. Phone masts give you 5G phone masts give you COVID. You have to sign up to that stuff. And that's part of the anti-Keir. They're two-tier Keir. That bleeds, doesn't it, from the insane social media into the supposedly saner mainstream media. You just have this. So I suppose I'm a little bit worried. About the Joni Mitchell paradigm, which we have applied on this programme many times. Two singers have given us great opportunities for radio phone-ins. Marvin Gaye with the immortal line, What's Going On? Something to which I often resort when I'm confused by the current affairs buffet. But Joni Mitchell, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. Here he is this morning telling Beth Rigby of Sky News where he currently stands on this subject.
Well, I don't think there should be a leadership election. I think that the last government proved that parties that spend their whole time in leadership elections don't go on to win the next general election. I would also say this, that Andy Burnham is in this by-election. I want him to win. Our activists, our members are up there campaigning for him. That is a good thing. If he does win, we've immediately got a Manchester mayoralty to fight, and that starts straight away. And it's very important to us that we win that.
So just yes or no, no circumstances.
I'm not going to walk away. I'm going to fight.
No circumstances you would step aside.
I'm not walking away. I'm going to fight.
And you know, he wins fight. One of the craziest calls we've ever taken about... a full list of candidates for the Makerfield by-election is available at lbc.co.uk/candidates. And ideally and hopefully, and with your help, that'll be the last time we mention the Makerfield by-election in the course of this morning. One of the strangest calls I've taken about Keir Starmer goes back to a fellow. Do you remember this, if you were listening? A bloke who was at school with him, who said his abiding memory of Keir Starmer was that he was always fighting. Like proper physical fist fights. He was always fighting. It's funny, isn't it? Because people who went to school with Nigel Farage, their abiding memory of him is him marching around the place saying that Hitler was right and that the Jews should all be gassed. The abiding memory of Keir Starmer from the contemporary that rang in was that he was always fighting. I think possibly in defence of his brother Nick, about whom he has spoken subsequently very movingly. And can you see what I mean about your pendulum swinging? You hear him there insisting that the whole world effectively is against him, but he's still fighting. We're supposed to admire, are we? I think we're supposed to admire that sort of spirit. And comparing him to Farage a bit, because Farage is currently leading in the national polls, he just never stops whining. He never exposes himself to scrutiny. He's still hiding from questions about the secret billionaire gift that we know about. God knows how many other secret multi-million pound gifts he may have received from billionaires keen to influence future policy. We will probably never know. Still not asking questions about his phone supposedly being hacked by Russian spies, because, spoiler alert, it wasn't. Still hiding, still whining, still hiding. That's just all that he does when he's not doing the racism. He's doing the whining and he's doing the hiding. Starmer is standing there, taking punch after punch after punch. And, of course, some from in front of him, from the opposition, and some from behind him, from people that are supposed to support him. And it's so bizarre that the Prime Minister feels like the underdog in the current climate. And I have an underdog issue. I have a problem with underdogs. It always kicks in during the World Cup, but if I'm a neutral, I kind of find myself leaning towards the underdog. And even if I'm not a neutral at the beginning of the game, I sort of start rooting for the for the team that is being put upon. And there's something about this week, today, this morning's news, this combination of stories. Andy Burnham essentially trying to be all things to all people. Leadership, battle, gossip and brouhaha ramping up a gear or two. Wes Streeting insisting that he's ready to trigger a battle imminently. And Keir Starmer standing there calmly, resolutely, and courageously. Is that an adverb too far? And insisting that he is elected to do a job. See, the thing is, I actually want you to disagree with me. And this is the problem sometimes with my monologues, is I set the ball rolling in such a speedy direction that it's quite hard to, sometimes difficult to remind you that I want you necessarily to kick it back towards me, to stay with the football analogies. I want you to remind me why a leadership election would be a good idea, or rather why you want one. Why you want one. Because here it is. Today, on Wednesday, June the 17th, 2026, I don't think I do. And I know that a month ago I did. And that's, I don't know, do I apologise to you for that? Or do I just remind you that John Maynard Keynes never said, when the facts change, sir, I change my mind, what do you do? Have the facts changed at all? Or is it just the feelings that are leading us down this road? That's the question, and I really want you to answer it. And I don't want to put anybody off from ringing in, but I don't think I'll have much trouble finding supporters of Keir Starmer, past, present, future support. Well, I may do. I mean, I shouldn't really do this, should I? But I can't quite see as clearly as I thought I could a month ago why a leadership battle, by a leadership election. I mean, he's played a blinder over Iran, an absolute blinder. When you remember, that's probably the best example. I know it's foreign policy, not domestic, but what does it take when you've got them all lining up against you? You've got almost all of the British media. You're being accused of all sorts of hideous things for not going to war with Donald Trump. And Benjamin Netanyahu, who are now, of course, at each other's throats, which is going to be a tricky obstacle to negotiate for people like Dick Littlejohn at the Daily Mail, who thought we should have been all in with Donald Trump and has never been more ashamed to be British than he was when Starmer stood firm. Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage both insisting that we should be doing everything we can to support them, and then pathetically reverse ferreting and claiming, no, I didn't mean we should actually do anything. I just meant we should cheer really loudly. And Starmer got that right. And of course, there's people on the left who are upset that he hasn't sort of cut off all contact with Israel and the United States of America forever. But he has, in the terms of what is feasibly diplomatically, he's played an absolute blinder when everybody else was attacking him. Everybody was attacking him. I don't know that I want a leadership election, but I really want to know what you think and why. And that's the question. You can't answer it without having strong opinions or strongish opinion. Well, can I say that now when I've just admitted that my opinion is spinning like a weather vane? I want to know whether you want another leadership election. Okay? That is question number one. And then, of course, I want to know why or why not. 0345 6060 973. But partly because of what happened yesterday and that reminder from the Rent Boy conspiracy theory of the absolute insanity that he's having to deal with, and the almost certain knowledge that some of that has seeped into sensible, sane people. Not the conspiracy theory itself, but the epic effort that Russian agents, and actual Russian agents, according to Panorama the other night, not just the members of Nigel Farage's party who were being paid by Kremlin stooges, but the real deal, the sort of sons of Russian diplomats, are desperate to destroy this man. And that makes me wonder two things. It makes me wonder why are they so desperate to destroy him? And of course, instability is part of the answer, but there must be more to it than that. And it makes me wonder whether we should actually be sticking up for him a bit more. If the Russians are coming for you, I would like to think I'd have your back, you know? And yet they're coming for our Prime Minister. That's not an opinion, that's counting. And we're saying, oh, let's toss him on the scrap heap, let's replace him, let's have another one. What do you think? So it's a question about the leadership election, and it's also a question about Keir Starmer. And it is, as ever on this programme, also whatever question you want it to be. It's 1024 0345 6060 973.
James O'Brien on LBC.
You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, and the question is relatively straightforward, but of course your answers can be as complex or as complicated as you want. Wes Streeting has said he would be prepared to trigger a Labour leadership contest to replace Sir Keir Starmer as Prime Minister as early as next week. Andy Burnham has clearly set his sights upon the top job, and Keir Starmer has made it pretty clear that he has absolutely no intention of either stepping aside or allowing a peaceful transfer of power. Partly, I think, because he has unfinished business. And 2 years into a premiership is objectively a little bit soon to be changing the leader. A little bit soon. Not too soon, but quite soon. And I also can't help worrying that it means that the Labour Party becomes a sort of simulacrum of the Tory nonsense that we've seen. How many Tory Prime Ministers did we have between 2016 and 2024? It's easy to forget. You can sort of forget about Liz Truss. Well, I wish we could all forget about Liz Truss, but you can sort of forget about Theresa May, oddly, because I suppose she was relatively innocuous. You can't forget about... Anyway, I'm talking too much. Rob's in Penrith. Rob, what do you want to say? What do you want?
Good morning, James.
Hello.
How are you?
All good, mate. I'm a little bit disturbed by my lack of certainty on this, but I'm sure you're about to fix that.
Well, everybody I speak to has contempt for Keir Starmer, unfortunately.
But they can't tell you why.
They don't like his record.
Which bits?
Mainly what comes up again and again is the attempts to remove the winter fuel allowance, and of course the reverse ferret on allowances for the disabled.
So he did what they wanted.
Well, he did, but the point is,
But they hold him in contempt for doing what they wanted.
In contempt for the uncertainty. Right. I think the main thing is that...
So what would... I am going to badger you a bit. What do you think they would hold him in if he had carried on with the policies that they hated? Because, to my mind, that makes them idiots, Rob. What do you think they would hold him in if he had carried on with the policies that they hated instead of doing what they wanted?
Well, I think...
Because contempt's a big word. I'll shut up now. You tell me.
Well, I think the thing is that he's been subjected to a process of vilification by the press. That's the first thing.
Well, it's worked on your mates.
If you look at the Daily Mail, that a day doesn't go by without...
I know all this, but I'm going to push you back to the question of what would your friends hold him in if he had persisted with policies they hate rather than done what they want?
They're not my friends. These are just people...
But you said everyone I talk to. So that must include your friends.
Well, I'm talking about people I talk to casually on the, on that basis here.
Right.
My friends, I don't know. Probably we think that a change would be necessary at this stage, and I can tell you why.
Go on.
He's lost the country. He hasn't the capacity to impress or to inspire. And the problem is that if we persist with him, what's going to happen is Farage is going to be let in. And I'm more concerned about that than anything else.
And if you could prove in a sentence that prospect would diminish in the event of a change of leadership at the top of the Labour Party, I'd be foursquare behind you. But you can't. And the polling, oddly, when you dig into it, as opposed to the who would you vote for in a general election, but if you dig into Labour led by X versus Reform led by Y, Starmer does pretty well. He would win, according to on that metric, which is a different polling question from the sort of blind question of which party do you currently prefer or which party do you currently want to lead a general election. And I don't know. And I'm not going to bully you, but I'm sick of people telling me about the winter fuel allowance or the disability benefits. He did what you wanted. He literally did what you wanted. A lot of people wish that he hadn't, wish that he'd stuck to his guns, raised some money that could now be spent on defence, as Russian ships are opening fire on British citizens in the Channel. But he did what you wanted. It's got a touch of the Brexits to it, or a touch of the Corbyns to it. It's like, oh yeah, he's done what I wanted, but I still hate him. And what do you want from the man? He listened to you, he changed course, he gave you what you wanted, but you still hold him in contempt. That's just stupid. That's right-wing. That's what right-wingers do to left-wingers. It's not what left-wingers do to left-wingers. The pursuit of ideological purity. I don't know, I'm going to talk myself into being a bloody cheerleader again, aren't I? A month ago, I was calling for him to go. It's 10:31. Dominic Ellis has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
The thing that really frustrates me, and I mean this, I mean this most sincerely. The thing that really frustrates me is and I think the reason it frustrates me so much is I don't know if I can argue with it. It's this. Keir Starmer has been appallingly treated, not least by the right-wing media, but also, of course, as we really discovered yesterday, by the insane sewer of social media. But it has worked so effectively that we have to get rid of him. You see, I think I've got a few people making that argument in the old inbox, and it breaks my heart because I don't know if I can. Here you go. This is put brilliantly by Davey. I think we have to, James. Unfortunately, I have to concede that the mad right-wing press have assassinated Starmer's character to the point that even reasonable, sensible people think less of him. And then, in order to keep the left in power at the next election, we need a clean skin in, for example, Andy Burnham. And Burnham is much more nimble to put up a fight against the Dick Littlejohns of this world. And again, Brendan writes, I think the impetus to remove Keir Starmer is too great now to be reversed. However, I don't think it will be long before numerous pundits start saying he was, in fact, one of the best Labour Prime Ministers of the last century. And James says, you're a big fan, thank you. You rocked me then, but I've given my head a wobble. Your show is a chamber of decency, James, but the rest of the media isn't. Starmer has been absolutely unfairly shafted, so we have to have a new leader. I'm very sorry to say it, but it's too late for Starmer. I tend not to lose my temper anymore on air. Maybe you missed the days when I did, but that's the thing where my blood starts boiling. I can't argue with any of these messengers, and I don't particularly want to, but what have we allowed to happen to us? And we're saying that online lies, whether it's the relatively or the previously mild-seeming nonsense about two-tier, and that's not confined to online. There's plenty of people with proper jobs who will be using that phrase, just like they used to use Trump derangement syndrome. Do you remember when that was a popular phrase? Being used by idiots who didn't understand anything and ignored all the people that did. Same with two-tier Kia or two-tier this, two-tier that. It's bonkers. But it has been so successful that we need to get rid of the target. And that is the thing that that's awful, right? If that's your position, and it might end up being mine. I can't argue with the success of the hit job. I can't argue with the success of the hit job, so we've got to have another guy, and then they'll just start attacking him. Rinse and repeat. As Starmer does, I think, and I don't have great confidence in my own opinions at the moment because it's all so confusing and so strange, but Starmer does actually represent, and so many things, a kind of bloody-mindedness that we need. And then on other things, he's moved with the wind. He's moved with the people. I mean, imagine old Robin Penrith. Everyone he talks to hates Starmer because he's done what they wanted. I mean, how have we ended up being those people? Why do you hate? Oh, because he's done. And then, of course, from the other side of politics, I can't believe how much of a shill for Israel he is. Have you any idea how vile Benjamin Netanyahu has been, both personally and politically, about our Prime Minister? Never mind Donald Trump, but Benjamin Netanyahu has spoken about Keir Starmer in the most outrageous of terms, particularly when referring to a man who is married to a Jew and raising his children in the faith, as far as I'm aware. Netanyahu talking about him in horror. Why would Benjamin Netanyahu have such a problem with Keir Starmer if Keir Starmer was doing the bidding of Benjamin Netanyahu's Israel? Do people ever stop and think about this stuff? And maybe the effort put in online to maligning him with vicious lies and ridiculous lies that... I'm sorry, I said yesterday, should we be calling these people idiots? If you believe that Keir Starmer's house was set on fire because he hadn't paid male prostitutes for their services, I don't know that idiot is too kind a word for you. I need a new word. I need to invent a word to describe what you are. I need Malcolm Tucker on the case, albeit that Ofcom would have a fit of the vapours. I mean, how flipping stupid do you have to be to believe this stuff? So on one side of politics, you've got those absolute cretins. And on the other, you've got the people saying, oh, I think he's got to go because, oh, none of the people I've spoken to can forgive him for doing what they wanted. With regards to the so-called U-turns or the reverse, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking myself into a tizzy. Charlie's in Walton-on-Thames. Charlie, administer the salts, will you, mate? I need to calm down.
Hi, yeah. How are you doing? You well?
Oh, good, Charlie. What's going on?
Good. Yeah, no, look, I think my point of view, I'm 23 and the cost of living crisis and housing and everything is extremely hard. But I think at the moment we're on... a very dangerous level when it comes to the economy and what's going on in the world. And I think, to be honest, I think Keir is a very strong-minded person and leader. And I think if we switch leaders at this point, we could be on the verge of an economic crash and a lot more instability.
Oh, look what happened last time.
Exactly.
The party in power switched leaders. I'm not suggesting they should have hung on to Boris Johnson, but they gave Liz Truss a go. And I don't think anyone's going to compare Andy Burnham to Liz Truss, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. If, God forbid, Boris Johnson and Liz Truss were ever to breed, the result would look a lot like Nigel Farage. And that should be a prospect that doesn't, but should, frighten absolutely everybody in this country, particularly people who consider themselves to be patriotic. Here's the thing, though, Charlie, and I don't know whether you can help me with this. We talk about him being strong-minded, and I agree. I just used the phrase bloody-minded, which is a sort of synonym. And yet, of course, on his list of governmental actions, there are 3 or 4 relatively big tickets upon which he didn't stick to his guns. And, you know, if it happens once or twice, you could probably argue that it's evidence of listening and changing course accordingly and just quieten the voices that are saying, well, why didn't he work all this stuff out before he flipping announced it and tried to make it into law? So was simultaneously praising his strong-mindedness while criticising his querulousness, his failure to stick to his own guns. It's hard to hold both positions at the same time, but I sort of think we both do.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, it'd be lovely if we lived in a dream world where politicians did exactly what they said they were going to do, but we know that that's just not the world we live in. And I think the world we live in, we have to be very careful at the moment with all that's going, you know, SpaceX IPOing and the oil markets and everything like that. We need someone in power who is strong, who is just going to be there throughout the term.
And stands up to the most powerful people on the planet when they happen to be deranged idiots, you know. This extraordinary tightrope walk of keeping Trump sweet and then refusing to do what Trump wants and then absolutely inviting the vicious, vituperative attacks of Benjamin Netanyahu while then getting attacked at home for being too cosy or too friendly to Israel. The poor man can't win. Whatever he does, he's getting attacked by somebody. And yet, like you, there's a growing sense inside me that I've had it for about a month, actually. I think I've had it ever since I wrote that the attempts to pander to reform, and that's gone quiet now. I know some of Shabana Mahmood's policies go further to the right than even the Tories did, but that Overton window is shattered. And the battle over the benefits of immigration has been lost. I think it was lost before he came into government. Breaks my heart to say this. But that doesn't even seem to be informing much criticism of Starmer or of this government anymore. And it's highly unlikely that Shabana Mahmood won't have a role in any future cabinets led by future leaders. So for about a month now, I've just found myself thinking, are we all actually now under the spell of the idiots? We're under the spell of the people who've been telling us for 2 years that Keir Starmer is absolutely awful, without really being able to tell us why. Because when you ask them why, what they say, it all gets a bit Brexity. Oh, he's far too cosy with Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu hates him. Oh, he's reverse ferreted. Did you like what happened at the end of the U-turn? Yes, I did, actually. That's exactly what I wanted all along. How would that... So... either I'm going mad or the country is. Martin is in Rousey on the Orkneys. Martin, what would you like to say?
Yeah, good morning, James. A couple of messages you read out before pretty much nailed it when they said there's no option for a change now because there is already a momentum built up pretty much by social media memes, TikTok, Facebook.
It's partly that, but you've also got, I know they matter a lot less than they used to, but you've got the Daily Telegraph, you've got the Daily Express.
Absolutely.
Someone bought Nigel Farage a television station. That's not the bloke that secretly gave him £5 million. That's a different billionaire. You've got the Daily Mail. You've got pretty much the entire media except me.
Absolutely, but you've also got power and interest and money on every single level investing in an anti-Starmer rhetoric. I communicate with a lot of my former sort of military friends via social media, unfortunately, and so many of them just come out with the same old nonsense. They say Starmer's a traitor, Starmer hates Britain. Some of them even say Starmer's a domestic terrorist. And they're just repeating rubbish that they read online. Yeah. And when I challenge them about it, they never, ever have any quality other than, I don't like Starmer, I hate him, he's an absolute, and then has a whole line of expletives.
It's so bizarre, isn't it?
But with no content whatsoever. But in Starmer's case, I want him to stay. I don't think we should have a leadership election because we need stability. And he is a stable, mature, a considerate individual. He's just got to do better at getting his cabinet to communicate the good work that they do.
Yeah, I don't think I'd put much money on him getting through the current mess, but I wonder if he did, it would actually strengthen his position and make him a little bit more impregnable, but that's probably fanciful.
I don't think he'll get through it either, unfortunately. I think they're absolutely right. The deal's done, but that just shows you the state of politics that we've got across the world, where power and influence.
He has messed up. It's not like we're talking about a paragon of political virtue. We might be. I think we are talking about a man more sinned against than sinning. But he's dropped some fairly large clangers. Morgan McSweeney seems to have been a dismal appointment, and let's not even mention Peter Mandelson, despite the fact that everybody who, with 2020 hindsight, condemned the appointment, was cheering it to the rafters when it actually happened. He's put a lot of feet wrong, but of course every politician does or would. What you haven't got with Starmer is a sort of fourth estate dedicated to pretending that he's not a morally bankrupt delinquent. If you think about the kind of coverage, Boris Johnson ceased to be Prime Minister in the most disgraceful of circumstances and immediately got hired by the Daily Mail as a £500,000 a year columnist. It's absolutely bonkers when you break it down like that. But that's the problem, isn't it? Is that that's the country that we live in, and we'll never know how much of the abuse of Starmer is built upon lies, whether online or offline, and how much of it is built upon genuine unhappiness or genuine... it breaks my heart to hear about military veterans who are doing the work of our enemies. If you learn about the almost, not completely proven, but the role of a 23-year-old Russian diplomat in the Rent Boy conspiracy theory and in the recruitment, the alleged role of a 23-year-old Russian diplomat whose father has got connections at the very highest levels in the Kremlin, and his alleged recruitment of the people who set fire to Keir Starmer's house, your old military mates are on their side when it comes to this part of the national conversation. They are doing the bidding of the Kremlin. And unlike Nigel Farage's mate, Nathan Gill, nobody needed to pay them. It's 10:47.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:51 is the time, and you can't argue with the fact that he gets it from absolutely every angle. He gets attacked for having abandoned Israel. He gets attacked for being in bed with Benjamin Netanyahu. He gets attacked for announcing policies that people don't like, and then he gets attacked for unannouncing them, sometimes by the same people. And people hold him... I can't get past that caller from Penrith. They hold him in contempt because he did what they wanted. After announcing something that they didn't like, he changed course, and now they really hate him. I mean, what can you do? And that is going to be the takeaway, isn't it, at 11 o'clock today? It's going to be that, it's largely, if not entirely unfair, concocted and confected, but it's worked, so now we have to get rid of him. What do you think that does for the next time? So what you actually want is someone who seems to be relatively untroubled by it, and somebody who it refuses to be bent by it or refuses to bow to it, and you end up thinking, well, Keir Starmer's my man. And then you end up remembering that he does bow a lot, and he does blow in the wind, and he does change course. But is there an argument for the things he changes course on being measurably different from the things that he doesn't change? I don't even know anymore, and that's why I began the programme this morning with an apology. My old mate Jones the engineer, who is now Jones the pilot, if you want to see him on YouTube flying planes, he said something, like, what was it like? When I've told you that story a million times. The lad I was at school with, who we all mocked for asking a stupid question, and with every passing year I realised that was the only question to ask. The only question to ask. Jones once said to me that he'd watched one of the leadership debates on the telly, and he didn't know whether he was coming or going because the audience wasn't allowed to clap or cheer. So he never knew whether anyone had made a good point or not. And I laughed at him. I mean, he told me it as a self-deprecating funny joke, and I joined in. But it haunts me, that observation. I think I'm slightly immune to it myself because of the amount of effort I put into getting across the news and getting across the stories. When you say to someone, why do you hate Keir Starmer so much? They either come out with nonsense about two-tier policing and the Fabian Society, or they claim that he is an Israel shill, while Benjamin Netanyahu is the chairman of the anti-Keir Starmer club. You ask, why do you hate Keir Starmer? The answer is, and of course people never admit this, which is why it's all gone a bit Brexit. Why do you hate Keir Starmer? Because I've been told to. It's really worked. It's succeeded. And whether you like him or not, if it really has succeeded, then you've got to get rid of him. But what do you think will happen next? Discovered this week that the recruitment of people to set fire to his house and the online lies about them being unhappy, unpaid prostitutes can be tracked almost certainly all the way back to the Kremlin. And yet you've got military veterans convinced that he's a traitor, Starmer, when in fact they are doing the bidding of people that wish our country harm. I've written about this morning in the Eye because it starts for me with the 5G masts, or the Great Replacement Theory, whatever it might be. These online madnesses that then bleed into real life are all designed to undermine our democracy and to destabilise our country. And if you want to see the people that the Kremlin want in power, well, just ask them who their favourite politician is, and they'll tell you. Or ask them who the politician they admire most is, and they will tell you. Nigel Farage will tell you that Vladimir Putin is the politician he admires the most, while then claiming and being allowed by the Mail on Sunday to plead absolute balderdash about the Russians hacking his phone. You couldn't make it up, could you? 10:55 is the time. Max is in Marylebone. Max, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome.
I just think Starmer did himself, I think, way too much damage, probably right at the beginning, where he turned out to be more of a disciplinarian than a leader. The way he was just continually purging the left and disciplining people and expelling people from the party and suspending their whips when they were, sort of on the side of maybe more pensions or whatever. And he had this incredible inability to read a room and then just dig his heels in after not having read it. And then I think his over-reliance on Morgan McSweeney for all that time showed him, whether it's true or not, I think showed him to be someone that really couldn't make his own decisions. And I think also his Gaza stance.
There goes the pendulum again, because that inability to make his own decisions, I think, is a very hard criticism to resist.
And what is probably fundamentally a decent man in this short amount of time has actually made himself be more hated than Boris Johnson ever was, which is.
But not for the reasons that you cite. They're not reasons to hate someone. It's not like his address was the site of more COVID law breaches than any other address in the country. It's not like he has the blood of British people on his hands because he couldn't make his mind up with regards to lockdowns and responses. It's not like he has lied every single day of his life to everybody from his wives right through to his colleagues.
But I just think the disappointment that people felt in him after what they were expecting after the 14 years of what we had and what
was unrealistic. I'm part of that.
How that turned around,
yeah.
you know, and I just think the disappointment that there were just people suddenly started thinking, well, this isn't really what we voted for.
Same. You know, I mean, I think I was one of those people. I think I probably somewhere inside I still am, but it makes me wonder whether I'm incredibly naive. What did we expect him to do? Well, we expected him to do better. I don't think anybody expected him to turn the economy round and rejoin the European Union and excise the legacies of austerity and Liz Truss and Boris Johnson and put Donald Trump in his box. I don't think anybody could realistically have expected him to do all that in a week or even in 2 years. But we just hoped for better. Is that a reason to get rid of someone, Max?
Well, I think his part. I think his initial sort of disciplinary approach.
I think he had to do that. I mean, I don't.
Irretrievably hated in the party.
I don't think he had any choice. If people are going to defy the whip, they have to be disciplined. You're making me sound like a dominatrix now. But if people defy the whip, and then you have to get because otherwise everything falls apart.
But they would defy the whip out of decency more than out of anything else. That was the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe a better backroom operation so that people could have been persuaded to just maybe keep their powder dry until we've been in the power for a little bit longer. Let's not start the infighting and the internecine warfare on day 2. But, of course, they did, and Starmer responded by trying to stamp it out. And, as you say, for an awful lot of people, that looked a little bit like breaking a butterfly on a wheel. Boy. And finally, Craig in Oxford. Craig, what would you like to say?
I'm not really in favour of Starmer hanging on to power. I think that he's quite similar to Joe Biden in the run-up to the last US election. But Biden was claiming that because he'd won the previous one, that he was the only person who could defeat Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He hung on until he was so unpopular in his own party he had to step down.
Well, it was more, I think, to do with his mental acuity than anything else, wasn't it? And I mean, there's elements of your analysis that work as a parallel, but I think Biden was pretty close to an exceptional example because of his mental decline.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not claiming that Keir Starmer has dementia or any kind of decline like that. I'm claiming that...
Can we clip that up, please?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. We can untick one box, although maybe the Daily Mail will have that as a byline tomorrow. Who knows?
O'Brien Caller claims Starmer has dementia.
Exactly. I've seen his medical records. No, not at all, just to be clear.
Yeah.
But I think the parallel is it's the hubris of the leader who won one election, believing they're the only person that can win the next one.
Yeah.
Their own party deciding to oust them clinging on to power, and whether it was George Clooney or whoever that convinced him he had to step down, the next leader didn't have enough time. And I think if you look at Starmer's approval ratings, the idea that I'm the only person that can win the next election is ludicrous. So I'm not saying that Andy Burnham would, or Angela Rayner would, or Wes Streeting would, but the idea that Starmer is the one...
I haven't heard him say that, Craig.
Kryptonite.
He
has said that.
Has he said that?
He's
I'm not doubting
said
you.
That. I mean, I don't have a quote in front of me, but I'm quite sure that when they first were, touting, I think Streeting was maybe the first one to break cover. He was like, and the other thing that he did, if you remember the Gorton and Denton by-election, is that his whole electoral calculus appears to be, we're the only ones that can beat reform.
Yeah,
so the Overton window is shifted further and further right.
Yeah.
They then lost to the Greens, and then his new calculus is, we've got dangerous radicals and extremists to the left and the right, and we're the only sort of moderates in the middle. I just find it, I don't know, it's like a game of chess where you're at that position whereby all your moves are like
you're
negative.
Just postponing checkmate.
Yeah.
And the best case scenario is a very unlikely stalemate. And you also, I don't know whether you intended this, but you remind us that the two-party system is both over and not fit for purpose.
Oh, exactly.
Because someone is going to have to reach out, someone in Labour is going to have to reach out to the Lib Dems or the Greens, and the Tories at some point are probably going to have to reach out to reform. The most obvious coalition would be Reform and the New Lot. I get so confused. Reclaim. Who was Reclaim? Restore. Is it Restore? Reform and Restore, but not Reclaim. So you reach out to Restore, but there's a personality clash there between two peas in a pod. Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe, which probably rules out any prospect of a pact, despite the fact that privately I suspect they agree about absolutely everything, except how awful the other one is. It's 11 children running, and that's it, isn't it? Keir Starmer was supposed to be a grown-up, and at the end of that hour, I still think he is. And it's Joni Mitchell time.
James O'Brien on LBC.
6 minutes after 11 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. What's the word that I'm looking for? I've just taken it away from the last hour. I've got a feeling there's a word that's got Max in it, M-A-X. Not Max in Marleybone, who rang in the last hour. But the word where everything, you have to be 100%. It's a single word. I'm not looking for zero-sum game or anything like that. But you have to be like a form. It's like purity. Political purity. Is there a word for that, like maximalisation or something? Because I think that's probably where we are. If you've ever said anything negative about so-and-so, then you can't possibly be tolerated. You must be the enemy. Whereas, in fact, you're on the same side. You might want the same prime minister, or at least the same party to be in power, but you once criticised him and you once criticised them. I don't know. Is it called maximalist? Maximalist. Is that the word? Maximalism? Yeah, I think that's the word that I'm looking for. I told you it had Max in it. That's the problem. It's mad, isn't it, when you think that almost all of the country's not almost all, but the country's descent into madness was started by a vote that was 52 to 48. And one of the elements of the subsequent madness is maximalism. 52 to 48. It's about as close as it can be. Slightly under 52 and slightly over 48 if you really want to dig into it. And yet, one of the consequences of that is that now you've got to be either 100% for something or someone, or 100% against it. And here we are, Here we are. Maximalism. The age, I might write that down, actually. I've got to write a column every week now, so and a book. The age of maximalism. You'll always be my first love, though. Don't worry. 7 minutes after 11. And because you are my first love, you will probably be able to guess the subject to which I want to turn your attention next. Well, I mean, do you know what the problem is with the question that I would quite like to ask you? Is I think I would be overwhelmed by naughty people. I think if I said to you, what was the first thing you thought when you learned that Prince George, the next king after the next one, all being well, was going to go to Eton? And if I then get bombarded with people saying, I thought I couldn't give a stuff, James, then I don't have a show. Do you see what I mean? You have to have something interesting to say in order for me to make an interesting programme. In much the same way that if I have nothing interesting to say, you would be perfectly entitled to go off and do something less boring instead. So if I say to you, what was the first thought you had when you learned yesterday, I think it was, that Prince George, and I wish I could think of a question one day that would allow us to do a phone-in about why we call people Prince. Prince George is going to Eton. Shall I trust you? Shall I give you the benefit of the doubt and ask you what the first thought you had? And obviously, this programme being this programme, why? There are many, many places where you can just say what. For example, I hate Keir Starmer, and not be asked why. But the interesting stuff happens when you are asked why. Why? Oh, because, he doesn't pay his rent boys. Or because he's two-tier. Why do you think that? What does that mean? You see why I've started saying everything's gone a bit Brexit. I've got a horrible feeling that is in the very real process of becoming a new catchphrase. Everything's gone a bit Brexit. But what was the first thing you thought when you heard that Prince George was going to Eton, and why did you think it? Go on then, I'll put that on the board. It's only 11:09, so it's probably another 47 minutes of monologue before you actually have to ring in. But if you want to book your place early, what was the first thing you thought and why? 0345 6060 973. Because I thought, oh, that's a shame. And you are perfectly entitled to ask me why. And I think I thought, oh, that's a shame because it will mean that he is completely detached and deliberately detached from, or he will find it much, much harder ever to understand the lives and concerns of ordinary people. Going to a school like Eton doesn't mean you can never understand the lives and concerns of ordinary people. For example, he could do a job like this for 20 years and then he would be absolutely overcome with the lives and concerns of whatever we mean by ordinary people. We're living in an age where some really unpleasant people use it to mean racist. Oh, it's the concerns of ordinary people. No, it's not. I don't even know what an ordinary person is, but by ordinary in this context, I mean someone who didn't go to Eton specifically and someone who didn't go to public school more generally. I think it's a shame for a future king to have spent his formative years in one of the most rarefied and privileged environments on the planet. I just think it's a shame. I don't know that they have much choice. I suspect that Charles's years at Gordonston were incredibly character forming, but not necessarily in a good way. The poor lad had an absolutely miserable time. Bullied, beaten up, I think, quite regularly. I absolutely hated it. And, that I used to be an even bigger idiot than I am now, and I was the kind of person who said, well, I think it did him a power of good. I think that being utterly brutalised, hundreds of miles away from home, between the ages of 13 and 18, clearly contributed to the character of the man. And look what a great character the man. I mean, good God. You send your own children if you want, but don't start praising the fate of others. So I don't know that they had much choice. The thing you can say about Eton is that, oddly, to most people, he won't actually stand out that much when he's there. I mean, there are probably some people who think they're posher than him. That's what the Queen once said about Margaret Thatcher. Did you know that? Reportedly, the Queen once said about Margaret Thatcher, she's far too grand for the likes of us. I hope it's true, because it's a lovely line. But I find class enduringly fascinating, and nothing entrenches class in this country more than not private education in and of itself, but public school educations in particular, just mean that nothing ever changes. The ruling class. You know how many prime ministers went to that single school? It's 20 prime ministers, including 2 of the last 4. 2 of the last 5, 2 of the last 6. I told you it was easy to forget Liz Truss and Theresa May. Johnson and Cameron both went there. The way that these schools entrench unquestioned privilege and unquestioned entitlement seems to me to be a problem, seems to me to be a danger. But it works, you see. It works. It creates people. I mean, what would you be like as king? What would you do if you were king? Don't answer that question by ringing in, but you probably would spend an awful lot of your time worrying that you shouldn't be king, right? And this, I think, might be part of where Charles was. The thing is, he had so long to get ready for the idea that he'd overcome all of those doubts and reservations. But generally speaking, you want your king. If you're an ordinary person, if you are a subject, and we all are, spoiler alert, then you would probably spend your entire life, unless you were a sociopath, worrying that you weren't actually worthy of being king. If you go to a school like Eton, you never have those problems. Not only do you think that you are entirely worthy of being king, you also have 10 people in your class who think that they should be prime minister, 1 or 2 of whom probably will be one day. So I don't know, it's about entitlement, it's about privilege, and it's about whether or not it's... I mean, they're great. I wish everyone could have entitlement and privilege. But of course you can't, because if everybody had entitlement and privilege, they wouldn't be entitlements and privileges. They'd be the normal, ordinary experience. And someone else would have to invent new entitlements and privileges in order to feel a little bit better and a little bit superior. So ring in on that one. If you ring in now, you'll get on first. 0345 6060 973. What did you think when it was announced that Prince George is going to Eton College? And now comes the divide, the great class divide. So Eleanor and I, who work together every day, like Hinge and Brackett, or like Tom and Jerry. No, more like Laurel and Hardy, I think. I don't know which is which. But Eleanor did not go to private school, and like an awful lot of people who didn't go to private school, has a kind of fascination with the weirdness of it. And I did go to public school, and like some, but not most people who went to public school, I have a kind of fascination with what I got from it that I can't see. What I got from it that I don't know. So if this was the Eleanor show, she would be asking about what is going to happen to the boy at Eton, that for good or for ill, people who haven't been to schools like that will never understand. Whereas, because it's the James O'Brien show, I would be more minded to ask, what is going to happen to him that he won't notice? And in some ways, it's the same question. And it's part of your answer to the question of what you thought when it was announced that he was going to go to Eton College. I mean, can you have a conversation about a king without talking about privilege and entitlement? I mean, it's a system built entirely on privilege and entitlement. If we didn't fetishise privilege and entitlement in this country, we wouldn't have a king. I think that goes without saying. We wouldn't have an aristocracy. We would have either chopped their heads off or consigned them to oblivion centuries ago, like the French tried to. And yet there's something about this that speaks to me. There's something about this. So my gut reaction to this announcement was, oh, what a shame, what a missed opportunity. But where else could he have gone? Send him to a minor public school, and that minor public school automatically becomes a major public school. It's a pretty grim phrase, minor public school, but if you grew up in my world, it's completely normal. You probably don't even know what it means. Minor public school was very chippy, like Nigel Farage. You send him to a minor public school, it becomes a major public school. The waiting list will be full of Americans by tea time tomorrow, and Chinese people at my old school are all over the registration because it's an attempt. So I'm not even sure what I'm asking. I just that weird sense of disappointment when it was announced, and a question about what you thought. 0345 6060973. But here is, okay, we're going to go with Eleanor on this one, and it means that the one half of the conversation is going to be confined to people who either went to Eton or went to public school. Do you know what Jilly Cooper said about my school? I should probably get the quote correct and share it with you completely, but I'll try and find it actually, but I'll paraphrase it first. Jilly Cooper, and good grief, has there been a better television programme in a decade than Rivals? I absolutely love it. But Jilly Cooper said that people who went to my school were the only people in the country who looked down on people who went to Eton. I don't know quite where that came from, and I don't think that it's necessarily true. But it just gives you an indication of the sort of class structure that you are either in or not in. People from Eton look down on people who go to Harrow, and people from Ampleforth look down on everybody, she wrote in a book called, I kid you not, Class. It's a brilliant book. She was also fascinated by... You have to be. If you love this country and you care about it, you have to be fascinated by class. You can't understand this country if you don't understand class. So, what is going to happen to this boy that wouldn't happen if he went to a normal school? 0345 6060973. What is going to happen to this boy that would not happen if he went to a different school? The first element of that conversation is boarding. Increasingly unfashionable, increasingly unpopular. What is going to happen to this boy that would not happen to him? And let us work on the presumption that he has a functional and loving family. I have no reason to think that he doesn't. The best place to be if you have a functional and loving family is in the bosom of your functional and loving family. This boy will not be. I know they're only round the corner, especially if they're at Windsor, but he won't be sleeping at home every night. What is going to happen to this boy that wouldn't happen if he went to a normal school? 0345 6060973. And what did you think when you learned that he was going to go to Eton College? I think the most rarefied and privileged environment in which a teenage boy can live. even more oddly than living in a Middle Eastern palace or a potentate's a palace, because you are surrounded by people who also feel that they were born to rule. Anyway, I find this fascinating, even if you don't. So it's a good job it's my show.
James O'Brien on LBC.
11:22. How big is the gulf? I mean, can you only see it from one side? This is what Eleanor and I do talk about quite a lot. Can you only see it from one side? You look at someone who went to a school like this, where Prince George is going, and you see something they can't see. How big is the gulf? People talk a lot about confidence, you know, and I often have to stop myself from responding by saying, yeah, of course, if you're paying £60,000 a year to be taught that you are born to rule, you're probably going to generate some confidence. I don't know that that's much help to a kid growing up in relative poverty in the middle of nowhere, to tell them they need to be more confident. Anyway, I don't know. I'm just talking about what you felt, your response to the news that the future king is going to Eton College in this great egalitarian age, and what is going to happen to the lad there that wouldn't happen to him if he went to a normal school. Rob's in Bournemouth. Rob, what have you got?
James, good morning to you. I think this is a really fascinating topic.
Fantastic.
I think your first
Top
point
of the
was
class.
It was how do I feel?
Yeah.
And the answer is disappointed. Not surprised, but disappointed.
Yeah.
For me, so cards on the table. I am not anti-monarchy. I would describe myself as moderately pro-royal.
Yeah.
You could describe that. The optics. So the royal family is vulnerable at the moment, and they're vulnerable to the lived experiences of the masses. I'm not suggesting that the future king should go to a comprehensive inner city, but I do think that going to a school such as Eton detaches you slightly. And this is not a binary outcome. It's not that you can't have any empathy with people who perhaps are living in deprived areas, but it does detach you, and it's how it looks. And perception for the royal family is really important for the next generation, because it's going to massively impact popularity, and frankly, popularity is important to the institution. And that's kind of how I feel and how I see it. So it's a really interesting one.
There's two issues here, as you've highlighted rather well. There's the sort of principle one, or the moral one, and then there's the logistical one, because we can't glibly dismiss the prospect of him going somewhere else. We have to actually genuinely speculate on where else he could have gone. So what would have made you happier about the moral or the principle dimension in terms of the logistical one? Where else could he have gone?
The logistical one is an interesting one, isn't it? Because there's undeniably a security aspect. Now, they will have this reasonably well sewn up by virtue of the fact that Harry...
yes and no. I mean, they've got knife arches at most at quite a lot of inner city London schools. The security there is going to knock Eton into a cocked hat. So I think they would be safe at some of the roughest schools in the country.
I think you might be right. But I wondered whether they would have chosen to have diluted it, because, of course, you know, private schools are not one entity. This is a heterogeneous group, isn't it? So you've got the likes of Marlborough College through to Bournemouth Collegiate School through to Eton, and actually they're not the same. And the optics would have perhaps been slightly more favourable if, for example, they'd have chosen something like Marlborough College, if you see what I mean.
I think is where his mum went, actually, maybe. I could have got that wrong. But then they would say... Then I think what people would say, well, they're just... I mean, it's patronising. They're treating us like mugs, of course. They're trying to pretend...
Or is it that they just... Is
Marlborough College really going to give you more empathy for ordinary people than Eton College? Sometimes these schools are chippier. Etonians never doubt their place in the world.
No, but I mean, your own lived experiences shape how you see the world.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, I'm 40 years old. I went to a comprehensive in Kent, and I was a product of that new Labour generation where I got to go to a really good university. And I guess that is social mobility, and I guess that
what would happen if he went to your school? What would happen if he went to your school?
That's a really interesting one. The answer is I don't know. I suspect there are pressures from many aspects of the social hierarchy. I suspect that they would feel pressures of him not going to a private school, but the fact that it's Eton stands out to me. And I think that's probably why I feel the way I feel, which is slightly disappointed, but not surprised.
Yeah, and maybe they didn't have any choice, which is when we get deep into the logistics of it. I don't know. Sorry.
That's another interesting one, isn't it? Because, of course, I went to university with lots of people who went to some very expensive schools.
Yes.
And actually, an awful lot of them are fantastic people. They did not choose where they went to school. And it's not their fault.
No, listen, I don't want to give the impression that I don't regret even going to the school that I went to because of all the things that it gives you. I don't think I'd be doing this job today if I hadn't gone to the school that I went to. My housemaster was one of those idiots who would say things like, you'll be in prison or in Parliament. You'll be a millionaire. I think he said, you'll be a millionaire or in prison by the time you're 21. And, of course, I was neither, but I don't know that I'd have had the swagger or whatever you want to call it, to do some of the things that I've done in the course of my career that have led me here. Maybe I would, I don't know, I'll never know. That's, a relatively small price to pay, but you can't argue with privilege and entitlement. It's why the worst people in the world are the ones that were born 3-0 up and think they scored a hat-trick. I don't think Prince George is in that category. I think he knows he was born 24-0 up. It's just that going to a school like Eton is unlikely to make him ever question the fairness of that. Or the inevitability of it. And then could you be king if you spent all your time questioning whether or not we should have kings? Dan's in Southfields. Dan, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Well, I'd like to say that for this particular boy, he's in the unique position where I don't think he'll get an advantage from going to Eton. So for anyone else, I would say that network that it's going to build, rubbing shoulders, ironically, with the royals and with very important people, to lots of people in society gives them the benefits that perhaps you and I had. But he won't get that benefit. And education-wise, what's the best education that he can get as someone in that unique position is to be connected to the people over which he will reign. So for him,
he's not going to be.
Not going. No, exactly.
Right.
So there's no benefit for him to go to that university, like
school.
School. Sorry,
Yeah.
But the benefit of education. I mean, the old story of his father and the driver. Do you remember? Sorry, grandfather and the driver saying, "Why didn't you go to university?" And he said, "Because I got the
same A levels as you, sir." Yeah, I loved that joke. It was on the Jasper Carrot show, I think, in the 1980s. It's one of my all-time. It was one of the first jokes I ever laughed at that was political. I remember thinking, "Oh, I got that." Yeah, exactly. But where else could he go?
Well, I think there are plenty of really good universities, that really good schools, other schools that he could go to that don't have the stigma of Eton. They don't have the kind of. I don't know. Because then,
but then you've got the patronising air of that whole thing, which is he's going to be king, mate. Send him to a school in a pretense that you are somehow rejecting or seeking to mitigate privilege and entitlement. You just have to forget that he's going to be king one day. Why did you go to that school? Well, because I think, we really wanted the boy to be aware of a world beyond privilege and entitlement. So we sent him to the 5th best school in the country or the 17th most expensive school. Oh, okay. So, this scepticism about privilege and entitlement, where does that sit on the fact that he's going to be king one day? What did Nicholas Soames say to me years ago when he rang in to... and I think he's a good egg, Nicholas Soames, for the record. There's a phrase you don't hear many people who didn't go to public school ever use, but I do genuinely think... He used to ring me quite a lot. Nick in Westminster would come on the line and you think, I wonder if that's Soames. And it usually, not always, it was. And he was singing the praises of schools in his constituency where he had been given the prizes out the previous weekend, I think, and stuff like that. And we were having a conversation about what another Tory had called public school swagger, and we must try and teach children that are not at public schools the public school swagger. I think it's better translated as confidence. And Nicholas rang in to endorse this idea and to sing the praises of the schools in his constituency, the state schools in his constituency, where kids were achieving an awful lot. And perhaps a little unfairly, I said to him, "Did you send your children to these schools, Sir Nicholas?" And I think, what did he say? I think you've just bowled me centre stump, James. I think you've just bowled me mid-wicket. And that's the point, isn't it? So if they didn't send him to Eton, it would look a little bit meh, wouldn't it? So is he going to be king one day? Yes. Oh, are you going to send him to Eton? No. That would be a bit privileged. Let me just run that by you. Is he going to be king one day? Yes, he is. Of course he is. Yeah, well, all being well. Who knows? But he is, as far as you know, all being well, going to be king. Yes. Are you going to send him to Eton? Oh, no. We just want him to be raised in a slightly less privileged milieu. It's 11:31. I've got that line from Jilly Cooper, and I think I did actually get it more or less right. I'll share it with you after the very latest headlines with Dominic Ellis.
James O'Brien on LBC.
I'm still waiting for people. Well, I suppose I'll have to have a go at it if you don't. Who went to a public school and can explain to people who didn't what is going to happen to Prince George that would not happen to him at a normal school. I have two quotes. The one I usually use is the Cyril Connolly quote from Enemies of Promise. Connolly, I think, was a contemporary of Orwell's at Eton. And he absolutely nails some of the problems, albeit I generally disagree with the final line of his theory of permanent adolescence. I'll share that with you shortly. And the other quote from somewhere elsewhere on the canon is the Jilly Cooper one, and here it is. So traditionally, the public schools look down on the grammar schools, and equally, the boarders at public schools look down on the day boys because they pay less for their education. Etonians look down on everyone, and the smartest Catholic school, Ampleforth, looks down on Eton. Which was not my experience, but who am I to argue with St. Gilly of Cooper? The big London public schools tended to be superior academically, but it wasn't smart to be academic, and most of the St. Paul's and Westminster intake lived in and around London, and no gentleman lived in London. And so it goes on. That perhaps explains one of the chips on George Osborne's shoulder. The great public schools, Eton, Harrow, Winchester, Rugby and Marlborough, look down on the minor public schools, and the boarding prep looks down on the day prep, who looks down on state school boys who, in return for such contumely... Did I pronounce that correctly? It's a wonderful word. That could be our word for the day, couldn't it? Did you know that word before? Contumely. Insolent, haughty or contemptuous language and insulting treatment. I may have announced it imprecisely, but I don't think I have. In return for such contumely, would duff them up. Prep school boys, they would duff prep school boys up on the way home. Finally, the good comprehensives despise the sink schools, where the brighter children despise the dumber ones, and the dumber ones actually refer, according to one schoolmistress, to the bright ones as snobs. Plus ça change, plus la même chose. I don't know if you heard me play that clip from Stephen Yaxley Lennon's last grift, but it involved people demanding that a woman be removed from the crowd because she looked like she'd read a book once. So there you have the least educated people condemning the brighter people as snobs in Jilly Cooper's book, which I think was written in the early 80s, possibly even longer ago, and nothing has changed at all. And that is why perhaps some people felt disappointment when it was announced that Prince George was going to go to Eton, because it's like nothing's changing, is it? Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed since the days of the Empire, when these schools would train the boys that were going off to far-flung lands to rule. And imagine turning up in India, convinced that you had a right to rule the place. This is one of the reasons why the far right don't want you to be taught about British history, because it's quite embarrassing. Nothing for you to feel guilty about. Goodness me, you weren't even born. But when you look at the historical palette, the idea that we would turn up in far-flung countries and tell the natives we're in charge now, and then start shipping all the raw materials home or flogging them for enormous profits. I mean, it's indefensible. And a little bit, I suppose, embarrassing if you can connect to previous generations. But I suppose the existence of these schools and the sending to one of them of the future king involves an admission or an acknowledgement that nothing has actually changed at all. For all the professed egalitarianism, you're still going to a school that costs £60,000 a year, which means you have to earn about £120,000 before you pay tax and have it spare in order simply to send your children, your son in this case, because Eton is still one of the few single-sex schools left, to send them there. What happens? I don't know. You see, this is the thing that I mean about the gulf between people who went to these schools and people who didn't. You can see the gulf, right? Can you see the gulf? But have you any idea what the other people see when they look at you? I don't. I mean, when do you think, when you're listening to me, when do you think, oh, typical public school boy? I mean, I'd like to think you never do. But I bet you do. If you do, I hope it's just low-level stuff, like calling Nicholas Soames a good egg. It's not a phrase I use a lot. But would I use it if I'd gone to a normal school, a comprehensive school? I don't know. What do you see that we don't see? And vice versa. Well, I mean, can you see the person on the other side of this enormous... I don't think we can, you know. I can point to little differences, So if you went to public school, you will ask people when you meet them, having used various codes, most obviously accent, you will ask them where they went to school. You will say, and I do this, so there you go, that's typical public school. Imagine if I did it at callers. Imagine if a posh caller came on and I said, where did you go to school, old Pip? That'd be absolutely incredible, wouldn't it? I wonder if we should have an experiment and find a full-on toff and get them to present a phone-in show in the way that they would conduct their life outside a studio. So someone rings in and goes, hello, first-time caller, long-time listener, and you recognise an accent, so you say, oh, hello, old boy, where did you go to school? And no one else says that. If you didn't go to public school, you never say, where did you go to school to someone? Unless you come from the same town. So if I met you on holiday and you said you came from Kidderminster, you might say to me, oh, what school did you go to? And I'd then have to say, oh, actually, I went to boarding school 200 miles away. But, hey, I went to prep school in Chaddesley-Corbett. And the reason you do it is because you will have connections, right? So I say to you, what school did you go to? And you say Baxter College, which is the big school in Kidderminster. And then you say, oh, you must know John, or you must know so-and-so. At public schools, I kid you not, you say to someone, what school did you go to? They say Harrow. You say, oh, well, you must know old Percy. You must know old Gussie Fink-Nottle. You say, went to Eton. I go, well, you must know my mate Jamie, or you must know so-and-so and so-and-so. So it's this extraordinary self-perpetuating constituency of privilege that either you're in or you don't really understand. And that is where he's going. And that's why I think simultaneously I've got a bit of cognitive dissonance going on here. It's a shame he's going there, but I don't see that they had any choice at all. He has to go there, right? He has to go there, doesn't he? 0345 6060 973. Chris is in Tooting. Chris, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. First-time caller, long-time listener.
Hello, old Pip. Where did you go to school?
I went to Arnold School in Blackpool.
There you go.
Which it was a private school. It's now been amalgamated into another local school. And it was a best school in Blackpool, but nonetheless, medium.
So there's a little bit of me there resisting a bit of snobbery when you say the best school in Blackpool, which is terrible, right? But I'm going to be completely honest with you. Is there a lot of competition?
Well, I could have gone to Barnes, mate. That's an absolute hellhole.
Yeah.
No, it was a private school. It was a good school. Not a massively expensive school. I reckon it was £1,000 a term. But nonetheless, for Blackpool, that's what it cost.
Yeah.
And it was a good school. And I hated it.
Why?
I think it's a problem that I've got with authority. Because
that would apply at any school. All schools have authority, so there's plenty of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. But mine was relatively straight. I think they let me get away with a lot. But it has taught me so much.
Go on, list them one by one.
The biggest one was a teacher, Nick Tomlinson. He was incredible.
Thank goodness for that. I thought you might be about to libel him.
No. He was amazing. This is a guy who, confirmed bachelor, used to turn up every day wearing a bow tie.
But I want to start peculiar to private school, because I think Mr. Bronson in Grange Hill wore a bow tie. So just give me something that's peculiar to private school, something that people who didn't go to a school like yours will not really know about or understand.
He was a drama and an English teacher, and he ran the debating society.
Right.
And I was in the debating society. Of course I was.
Yeah,
Guess
see,
what?
there's a thing.
I can also read Latin. But he just buoyed me. He absolutely... I don't know what it was. He saw something in me that nobody else seemed to see. And he gave me a love of language and of...
But you could have got that at a non-fee paying school. You'd have been luckier, but it still could have happened. So I'm trying to pin down what Prince George is going to get that he wouldn't get anywhere else.
I think he's going to be amongst his peers.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
I don't
care whether he goes to Eton or not. I don't care.
I was mildly disappointed when it was announced, because I have this sort of naive hope that the country I live in, the society, will become more egalitarian. But how can it become? The bloke's going to be... I think some of the Scandinavian royals go to normal schools, so it's not beyond the wit of man.
What, with their protection?
I don't know. I mean, you never know how that works either. Until you actually find out for yourself. But protection is like a self-perpetuating phenomenon. Of course, once you have it, you could never suggest taking it away because unless you're Prince Harry, they took his away. So they obviously don't think it is 100% necessary for them all to have protection, unless they were playing fast and loose with Prince Harry and his family's safety. But it's also status. I mean, Andrew was the one that really loved having security. I don't know. I think that adds to the sense of mystique, actually, having all of the security around. It's why Nigel Farage hires them, so many people, to protect him from largely mythical milkshakes. It's 11:45. It's a status announcement. I don't know. We're not getting there. I mean, this idea, I think, is going to be the conclusion. It's a shame he's going there because of general unspecified belief in egalitarianism, but what the hell else could they have done? And PMQs is just around the corner, which means I must tell you who the politician that... I don't like Nazi comparisons. You have to be careful. You have to back them up. I think it's very important to remember that the Holocaust did not begin with the gas chambers, for example. The Holocaust began with demands for millions of people to be deported, without anybody cheering that idea on, being particularly concerned about where they would be deported to. So you have in UK politics at the moment, you have an echo of that moment in 1930s German politics. But of course, it doesn't mean that the people currently calling for the deportation of countless residents of this country, legal residents of this country, that's something else, of course, that is a parallel with Nazi Germany, it works. You've got to be able to back it up. If Elon Musk gives salutes that look identical to Nazi salutes, you're allowed to use the word. He's allowed to claim it was a Roman salute. You're allowed to raise an eyebrow at the prospect, but don't throw the word around. Johnson did it when he described European Union officials as concentration camp guards. I just think it's disgusting, actually. Who do you think has suggested that Bridget Phillipson has acted like a Gestapo officer by ending a tax break for private schools? I'm going to give you a clue. She's fantastic. Oh, she's just brilliant. Oh, if I could get one drop of her utterly deluded self-belief, I'd be Pope by the end of PMQ. Have you worked it out yet? I'll tell you after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Excuse me. I just thought of something that also probably singles out public school boys in particular from people who didn't go to boarding public schools. And I just said to Eleanor, do you think I could share on the radio that an awful lot of nicknames are derived from ... And she said, well, give me some examples. So I said a few examples. She went, yeah, I don't see why not, but I can't do it. It's too rude. I can't do what it... She said, give me some examples. So I said, all right, potato and pencil. And I'm not going to tell you. But anyway, if you went to that kind of school, then some nicknames will be derived from an area that you wouldn't initially or immediately think of. 11:51 is the time. Samantha is in Salisbury. Samantha, what made you pick up the phone?
Morning, James.
Hello, Samantha.
I think they have to send him to a public school if they want him to be king. I don't think they have a choice. I think they need him to have that built-in entitlement and confidence that only a public school will give you. You're not going to get that from a comprehensive school at the bottom of your road. And if you think that you need to be king and you have an entitlement to be king, you need to be brought up in that kind of environment.
Yeah, I mean, it's neither good nor bad when you put it like that. It just is.
It just is.
What would happen if he went to... I mean, I keep sort of... I'd like to name a specific school, but I don't know that it's fair. I mean, what would happen if he went to the local comprehensive in Salisbury?
I think he would start questioning things.
He'd start thinking he shouldn't be king.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's it, isn't it?
That the world is unfair, and actually he might start questioning the monarchy, the rule system, the class system we have in this country, and they can't have him questioning that. They need him to have this entitlement and this belief that this is what he was born to do, and he won't believe that if he's surrounded by other normal folk.
No, I think you're probably right. And of course it doesn't just apply to the king, it applies to pretty much everybody who goes to these schools who would start doubting the fairness of a system which has anointed them from birth with epic privilege and entitlement. Even, you know, with the parents like mine who could barely afford it, you still come away with the trappings of self-belief.
Absolutely. And they're not going to give that up, because if they start questioning it, then where does that lead? They're not going to question a world that gives them everything, are they?
No. I mean, what's your perspective on this personally, rather than just intellectually?
Oh, I think it's really hard. So I am from the northeast of England, grew up in a council house near Middlesbrough, so a very hard upbringing.
Yes.
And I'm married to an Old Etonian. So our worlds are a complete clash of culture, of class, of
What's the biggest What's the biggest difference? What's the biggest thing that you perhaps didn't expect until you got married, or you had been together for a while? The thing that felt most impenetrable?
I think the thing that was hardest is these people and most of them are lovely people, like they're not bad humans.
No, of course.
But they just have this confidence that I'd say money can't buy, but money can buy it.
Money literally buys it.
It does, yes, money literally buys it. They have this confidence and this self-belief, and part of that is what drew me to my husband, because he is an amazing orator and he can hold a room and he is lovely. But it is the thing you were saying about when people ask you what school you go to. I'm nearly 45. I still get asked what school I went to, and it is...
Because you sound quite posh. I don't know if you've always sounded like that.
I think I am very good at linguistics, and I've just naturally... It's easier to sound like this where I live now and the company I keep than it is to sound like where I come from.
Do you lapse when you go back to Middlesbrough?
Oh, absolutely.
Did you ever go? I'm trying to think of your age, whether or not was Ria's Creamy Ices still a thing when you were living in the Middlesbrough area, where Brian Clough met his wife? No, that's a shame. It's the family business of a very good friend of mine. It hasn't been around for years, but I always think that if you wanted to get your head around the Middlesbrough accent, and saying Ria's Creamy Ices is Ria's Creamy. It's one of the best ways to do it.
Yeah, sadly, I can't do it on demand. I have to be up there.
No, you nearly did then. You said demand.
Oh, did I? Okay.
and you're right. I mean, you know, some of these conversations can be unkind because you're talking about things over which young boys have absolutely no say. But that political question of what would happen if he didn't go there, he'd start recognising how ridiculous the whole thing is. Which is why the Queen always said, don't let the light in.
Yeah.
Don't let the light out. Lovely. Thank you, Samantha. As soon as you mentioned your age, I started going through that mental Rolodex of people, if your husband is the same age as you, of people who I would be able to remember who were probably there, the younger brothers of kids that I knew who would have been there when he was there. And that's just weird. Yeah, of course it's arrogance. Lawrence says it's not confidence. But you tell me the difference between arrogance and confidence. Often the difference between arrogance and confidence is that a confident person has grounds for their confidence, whereas an arrogant person doesn't. But Samantha is describing someone who has grounds for his confidence because he can hold a room and he is a great orator, therefore he's not arrogant. But you need to be arrogant to stand up in front of a room full of people and think that you're interesting enough to be listened to which my traditional response is to say, well, how does that translate to someone presenting a radio show with 1.5 million listeners? Michelle's in Windsor, just down the road from Eton College. Michelle, what would you like to say?
Well, just in response to your question, the local school would be Windsor Boys School.
Right. What would happen if he went there?
Well, my point was actually about misogyny, and I don't know whether that would make it a huge amount of difference, but it's an awful lot rougher than Eton College. And my daughter went to Windsor Girls' School, where they do actually still have split education. But my point was, what would he gain by going to Eton? And what about Princess Charlotte? He would gain misogyny and an advantage educationally that his sister will not get. We have a perfectly good school that's not been mentioned in Ascot, Licensed Victualers, which is a private school that's been running for years and years and years. And like Marlborough, it's co-educational. But by sending George to Eton, you have automatically cut Princess Charlotte off. And given that we've changed the rules of succession so that in future a female can succeed, I think that there is a big misogyny argument about that.
Misogyny is a big word. I mean, not literally, but it might be sexist. It's not misogynist, is it, necessarily?
I don't know. I mean, I know...
It's not deliberately maligning women because they're women. It's sexist because it's providing an advantage to a boy that's not available to a girl. So if they'd sent him to an incredibly privileged... Or if Eton had gone co-educational 5 years ago, like my school did, I think, 10 years ago or something, then it wouldn't... your point wouldn't really apply, would it?
No, but also there is... the girls' school used to go over and do a lot of stuff with the science club with Eton College. And one of the things about the boys at Eton College is when it came to girls, compared to the Windsor Boys' School, they were very socially awkward. I mean, locally,
How long ago was
boys
this?
are referred to as the Penguins.
That's because of what they wear, not because of how they walk. How long ago was your daughter visiting the school?
Well, she's in her 30s now, so we're.
There's an interesting quote in the Telegraph today from someone saying there are two Etons. If you're in your 50s, if you went there in the 70s, the 80s, or the 90s, then you would be all the things that you describe. But in recent years, it's sort of softened at the edges and is not necessarily quite the sort of hotbed that you describe. I don't know. I mean,
well, my daughter's a bit younger than Prince Harry,
so she'd have been there. Yeah,
it would have been while she would have been starting at the girls' school while Harry was in the upper years at Eton. So it's relatively recently. And,
where could they send Charlotte that would diffuse your criticisms?
Well, the argument would probably be for sending George to a local school so he could still come home at weekends.
But then Samantha says he'd start wondering how on earth he can be king one day because it's so ridiculous and unfair and unjustified, the idea that you're king.
I mean, the alternative for Charlotte is licensed victualers, which is co-ed, or Marlborough, which is a long way away.
Which is where her mum went. I think her mum went there. I keep saying that.
Still quite a lot. It's still quite an hour and a half's drive, or someone like Cheltenham Ladies College.
Yeah, Rodine used to be the school that everybody mentioned as the sort of female equivalent of Eton, but I'm a bit out of the loop, to be honest with you. I have no idea whether or not that is still true. Thank you, Michelle. And then a quick one. I think James in Westminster might be it's not going to get a Ray Liotta, but I think we should squeeze you in, James, for reasons that will become clear. What will he get from there that he wouldn't get anywhere else?
Hi, James. Thanks. I think if you take a step back, probably the number one reason why any parent would send their child to Eton is opportunity. And in this case, that probably doesn't really
I'm glad I didn't jump in then. I'm glad you qualified that yourself. So what opportunities for what? Being king?
His life is mapped out for him. So I think from the viewpoint of his parents, they probably just want him to have as best a time as possible for the 5 years, aside from everything else.
Yeah.
And I think someone previously mentioned that their husband can hold court. I think there are something ridiculous like 5 societies thrown every night across the school, across a range of topics. So from a sort of diplomatic perspective, that can only be a good thing for him. And secondly, at the end of the day, it's a tried and tested model with William and Harry, with security and the privacy that the school can give.
Were you there with either of them, or are you younger than them?
Younger than them.
You're younger than... what about Samantha's suggestion that if he went to a, quotes, normal school, end quotes, he might start questioning the existence of monarchy itself?
Well, I think, that implies that people who go to somewhere like Eton just have absolutely zero understanding of...
Well, George Orwell went there, so there's plenty... Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's plenty of people who have come away profoundly Republican in their outlooks. And B?
Yeah. And B, just echo what you said, I can't remember my...
That's a public school thing you just did. I do that as well. I say A to give myself time to think of it. There are 3 reasons why James from Westminster is a brilliant caller. A, he went to Eton. Oh dear, Aggie Chambre is here because it's time for PMQs. Aggie, welcome.
Thank you.
What do we expect? Oh, hang on, I need to reveal something. Which politician said Bridget Phillipson is not fit to be prime... No, I beg your pardon. Bridget Phillipson has acted like a Gestapo officer because she ended a tax break for schools like Eton College.
Was that Kemi Badenoch?
It was the brilliant, the magnificent, the incredible Kemi Badenoch, a woman whose self-belief in the face of so much evidence to the contrary is a lesson to us all. So drawing Nazi comparisons with Bridget Phillipson, who was understandably cross about this, pointing out that the Gestapo marched hundreds of thousands of innocent people to their deaths. I've ended private schools' tax breaks to invest in state schools. No responsible leader makes... Well, it's Claire Coutinho today. Are we going now? Okay, shall we go now? It's the Day of the Deputies. Here it is.
Today as well. I also pay tribute to those who lost their lives in the Grenfell Tower fire, and I'd also like to congratulate Scotland on their stunning win and wish England the very best of luck for tonight. Now, Mr. Speaker, it is a great privilege to be standing here with one of the few survivors of Labour's original cabinet, who hasn't resigned on principle or been sacked in disgrace. I feel honoured. So can he start by telling me this? Why is the Labour government happy for Britain to get its oil and gas from Russia or Qatar, but not from Aberdeen?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, can I welcome the Shadow Energy Secretary to the dispatch box. It's always good to hear from someone who was the heart of the Treasury during the biggest fall in living standards on record. The Children's Minister in government that plunged hundreds of thousands of children into poverty, and the Energy Secretary who showed an unwavering commitment to the cause of net zero, even though she's now forgotten that. Don't believe everything you read in the papers. The Prime Minister and the Energy Secretary have been discussing cutting bills by over £100. We've got our Warm Homes plan lifting millions of families out of fuel poverty and securing enough energy projects to power 23 million homes. She was the Energy Secretary who left our country exposed to global fossil fuel markets. We're delivering clean energy security.
Mr. Speaker, bills came down £500 under me. They've gone up £300 under these guys. And this is nonsense. His party are banning new oil and gas licences in the North Sea. And these guys over here, they're no better because this is the same policy that the SNP championed for years. It is pointless virtue signalling and it's destroying well-paid jobs. So can he tell the House how many jobs have been lost in Aberdeen since Labour came to power?
Deputy Prime Minister.
I remember when the Energy Secretary championed net zero. She said in 2023, we cannot prosper, nor can our children flourish if we don't decarbonise energy. The Tories used to believe this 3 years ago. Now she's forgotten because they're desperately chasing reform and we know it. Over 700 jobs were lost during the last 10 years when they were in power. Production fell 75% over the last 25 years. We've secured over £900 billion worth of investment to support more jobs by taking control with renewables. And there are over 100,000 jobs in Scotland supported by clean power. We're building on that, led by the Great British Energy, headquartered in Aberdeen.
Mr. Speaker, let me help him out. 1,000 people are losing their jobs every month in places like Aberdeen South because of Labour's policies. They say those oil and gas workers can get new green jobs, but what they don't say is those salaries pay half as much. So can he tell the House how he would feel if the government forced him to take a 50% pay cut?
Deputy Prime Minister.
The Honourable Lady used to be an investment banker and she's got her facts wrong. Oil and gas is coming out of the North Sea 24/7. In the first 3 months of this year, 52 million barrels of oil came out. 44 million barrels equivalent of gas came out. We're not turning off the taps. It's part of a mixed economy that will support existing oil and gas fields throughout their lifespan, making changes to exploit neighbouring fields. But we do want to create more jobs, and that's why we're going to continue to invest in renewables. She knew this 3 years ago. She's changed her mind because she's chasing them.
Mr. Speaker, I asked him about pay cuts, and they should care. They should care, because if the Mayor of Manchester gets his way, I'm pretty sure half the front bench are going to be getting a pay cut pretty soon. Mr. Speaker, this is serious. The world is getting, Mr. Speaker, the world is getting more dangerous. Yet last week, the Prime Minister asked the Energy Secretary to help fund the defence of our country, and he ghosted him. Let me repeat that. The Energy Secretary refused to meet the Prime Minister on a matter of national security. Why hasn't he been sacked?
Prime Minister.
Stop reading the papers, I'd say to the Honourable Lady. I certainly don't like papers. Mr. Speaker, when the Defence Investment Plan is published, it will set out, this is important, it will set out how every government department is contributing to defence, including the Energy Department. We will always put national security first. The party opposite still don't get it. Families worried about their bills going up because of a war in the Middle East that her leader said she'd jump into feet first.
If everything's so hunky-dory, why did half his defence team quit last week? Mr. Speaker, they won't find the money to keep our country safe, so let's go through some of the things they can find the money for. Millions of pounds to build solar farms in the Congo, tens of millions of pounds on an experiment to dim the sun, and they are turning down £25 billion in tax revenue from the North Sea to please their out-of-control Energy Secretary. Does he really think that any of that is more important than defending our country?
Deputy Prime Minister.
We've said that more spending on defence is our number one priority in this spending review and the next spending review. But she wants to talk about resignations. Let's just remind ourselves. The Tory Defence Secretary that resigned in the last government, remember, for Stone, who was sacked for breaching national security. The Tory Defence Secretary, Michael Fallon, who resigned over sexual harassment. The Tory Defence Secretary who admitted hollowing out the armed force services for 14 years, that was Ben Wallace. We've got a Prime Minister securing jobs and investment in the G7. We've got a Chancellor raising the minimum wage. We've got an Education Secretary cutting costs for childcare, and we've got an Energy Secretary cutting energy bills by over £100. We're proud of that record.
If everything is fine, why is he here? Let's face it, this is, he wasn't here last week, was he? Let's face it, this is a government on life support. And what's their grand plan now? They want to, let me get this straight, they want to make the job-destroying Energy Secretary Chancellor. They want to bring back the former Transport Secretary who resigned for nicking phones. They want to replace him with the former Deputy Prime Minister who resigned for dodging taxes. These are all pointless distractions. So here's a better idea. Why don't they cut welfare, fund defence, make energy cheap, and back the North Sea?
It's thin gruel. It's very thin gruel, Mr. Speaker. I'm here like she is because I'm standing in for the Prime Minister and the leader of my party. I'm proud to serve this Prime Minister and proud of what this Labour government is delivering. More rights for working people, the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation, the biggest boost to defence spending since the Cold War, and lifting more children out of poverty in a single term than any British government in history. The party opposite can make all the noise they want. They don't want to talk about the economy because it's growing. They don't want to talk about the NHS because waiting lists are falling, and they don't want to talk about immigration because they lost control of our borders and net migration is down under us 82%. They had their chance, they blew it. We're building a stronger, fairer Britain.
I also want to pay tribute to Jo Cox and her family and the commitment in her name that we tackle division and extremism, because we saw extremism play out on the streets of Belfast last week, a pogrom, families burnt out based on the colour of their skin, health workers stopped for ID by masked thugs, small businesses ordered to close, and many minorities are still living in fear after a list of their addresses was circulated widely online. They deserve more than sympathy and warm words. They deserve to know that governments are serious about confronting hatred on and offline. The UK government and the Northern Ireland Executive spend millions each year on programmes intended to tackle paramilitarism, but decades after the Troubles, individuals linked to loyalist paramilitaries had a role in directing and fuelling the disorder last week, including menacing a senior journalist on tape. Will the UK government commit to reviewing how the Northern Ireland Executive is gripping or failing to grip paramilitarism, and will they ensure that public money never reaches individuals or groups who fuel, orchestrate or benefit from intimidation and hate?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, can I join her in utterly condemning the violence? People are right to feel sickened by the sight of people being burnt out of their homes because of the colour of their skin. That is racism, and Mr. Speaker, those responsible will face the full force of the law. We must never go back to 1950s Britain, where my father arrived to signs saying no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. We are focused on bringing people together, and that includes providing a further 24 million to help tackle paramilitarism, acting to tackle those inciting hatred online, and our social cohesion plan is about bringing our communities together. I'm happy to work with all parties in that endeavour.
Daisy Cooper, Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself and my party with the Deputy Prime Minister's tribute to Jo Cox? We extend our condolences to her friends and family and to all those of Roy Hattersley as well. And can I join with the Deputy Prime Minister in remembering the horrific tragedy of Grenfell, and that those families still are awaiting justice? Mr. Speaker, can I congratulate all those named in the King's Birthday Honours List, congratulate Scotland and wish good luck to England for this evening. Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Member for Rawmarsh and Conisbrough is respected across this House. When he says that he was forced to make decisions that could make the country less safe, we should all take heed. It is now becoming clear that the Treasury's refusal to consider new ways of funding defence is undermining our national security. So will the Deputy Prime Minister join with us to make the case in government for new defence bonds, which could raise £20 billion over 2 years to defend our country?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, can I say to the Honourable Lady that we do believe that we should work with our allies to join up defence procurement and funding. That's why we're exploring the most effective mechanisms for multilateral cooperation. And of course, it's a topic of discussion for the Prime Minister at the G7.
Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're pleased to hear that the government is looking at this, but they need to act far quicker. Mr. Speaker, it is now more than 5 years since the Prime Minister originally set his famous red lines on Europe when he was in opposition. No customs union, no single market. But since then, the world has changed. Putin has launched a war on our continent, An unreliable Donald Trump has returned to the White House, and here at home the cost of living has got worse and worse. So does the Deputy Prime Minister agree that the government should rip up those red lines now, or is that just another job to be left to the next Prime Minister?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I was proud to be the Labour Foreign Secretary that returned to the meeting of European Foreign Secretary and work alongside my colleague in the Cabinet Office to ensure that we were at that summit, and it was successful last year. And I've just confirmed the next summit will take place on the 22nd of July. Our red lines remain, but we're focused on an SPS deal to cut prices on the shelves, a youth experience scheme, and cutting red tape for exporters.
McNally.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the whole House will...
It is 18 minutes after 12, and that brings to a conclusion this week's or at least the main thrusts of this week's PMQs. I give Aggie Chambre a moment or two to compose herself, because I think that Kemi Badenoch's stand-in asked Keir Starmer's stand-in why Keir Starmer's stand-in was standing in for Keir Starmer, but I may have got that wrong.
James O'Brien on LBC.
We'll catch up with her before the end of the programme. I've also got a rather splendid juxtaposition, I love that word, a juxtaposition of an unhinged headline with a missed information, which means that Tom, who's in the chair for Keith today, is going to have to press two buttons shortly after 12:30 today. I hope you've checked your contract, Tom, but that is absolutely what we expect of you. But before all of that, Aggie Chambre, our deputy political editor, is here. Now, if I wanted to channel the spirit of Claire Coutinho at this point, I'd say, why are you here?
It would be a great question. I mean, I'm here because Natasha Clark is
why are you here?
Makerfield.
You weren't here last week.
No, I know. So that was strange, wasn't it? Yeah. Because we all know why David Lammy is standing in. David Lammy is the Deputy Prime Minister. He is standing in for Keir Starmer at Deputy Prime Minister's questions, because Keir Starmer is at the G7, and whenever Keir Starmer's there, it means that David Lammy's there, and then it means that there's some sort of deputy for the Conservatives, although they love keeping us on our toes, and they just put up whoever they want to talk about, whatever topic they want.
Is that because Badenoch doesn't want a deputy? She doesn't want anybody to have a power base around which anybody may gather, or is it... Oh, well, sorry, what a silly question. It's because she's a political genius.
I think it is genuinely because on days like today, they don't want David Lammy to have too much time to prep and work out exactly what's going to be asked. So they keep everyone on their toes, and then they...
Political genius. She's a political genius.
That is one way of putting it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's how she puts it.
That's how she puts it.
Absolute political genius.
Or at least getting there to political genius, getting better every day.
But he seemed to know exactly what was coming, because he had her CV in front of him, and indeed her track record of being in favour of all the things that she is now professing to be opposed to, from net zero down.
Indeed. So Claire Coutinho is, of course, the Shadow Energy Secretary, the Shadow Net Zero Secretary. And she wanted to talk about, although she didn't actually mention it, that crucial by-election that we spent so much time covering, of course, the one in Aberdeen South, not actually the one in Makerfield. And that is because some people, some Conservatives locally, are basically saying that represents a referendum on oil and gas. And she effectively, I think, wanted to punch the bruise that there is among the Parliamentary Labour Party and the disagreements on where they stand on new licences in the North Sea. We also have had one of the Labour supporting unions, GMB, talking about this too, and being very critical of where Labour and indeed Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary, stand on this. So she began by asking why Labour was happy to get its oil and gas from Russia or Qatar, but not Aberdeen. And Lammy then talked about the fact that she was a Treasury Minister during the biggest fall in living standards for decades, and then said, and he said this a few times, James, don't believe everything you read in the papers. She went on to ask how many jobs had been lost in Aberdeen. And Lammy talked about, as you mentioned, the fact that she used to champion net zero when she was Energy Secretary. And she then talked about the fact...
Which is just true.
Which is factually true, yep. And she then said that 1,000 jobs are being lost in the oil industry a month, which is also what... industry sources do say as well. He then said she got her facts wrong. And then, perhaps unsurprisingly, she turned on to these reports reported by Patrick Maguire in the Times that Ed Miliband has been basically ghosting the Prime Minister. He was trying to Keir Starmer was trying to call Ed Miliband, and Ed Miliband just wasn't really getting back to him, which is pretty extraordinary. Of course, this comes after there were reports as well that Ed Miliband, which haven't really been denied, that Ed Miliband basically called for Keir Starmer to go and said that he should set out a timeline in the days before the local elections. And obviously things are pretty frosty between the pair of them. It has been the fact that Ed Miliband's ghosting Keir Starmer has been denied by a source close to Ed Miliband, but still pretty awkward. And then that gave David Lammy the opportunity to say, once again, don't believe everything you read in the papers, or stop reading the papers. And Claire Coutinho then made a little joke about the cabinet getting a pay cut soon, and also managed to get onto the sort of domestic politics of talking about potentially Ed Miliband becoming Chancellor, Louise Haigh, the former Transport Secretary, Angela Rayner potentially coming back into the cabinet too. So she had a bit of a jibe there. And of course, couldn't get through a whole Deputy Prime Minister's questions without mentioning defence.
Indeedy-doody. I think, speaking of defence, Tony tells me that Claire Coutinho may have been pointing at Dan Jarvis when she said, "Why is he here?" And not talking, because I mean, certainly if you were listening exclusively to the audio, it sounded like she was talking to David Lammy, but
that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, that would actually make some sort of sense, albeit and drawing attention, of course, to the resignation of John Healey, which, of course, it was also reported this morning, blindsided Keir Starmer because he was so worried that Ed Miliband might have been about to resign. We should probably add that the account of this so-called ghosting was rejected by a source close to Miliband. According to the people that reported the ghosting, who said that the pair eventually spoke and denied that Miliband declined to take the Prime Minister's calls. It's a funny one, isn't it? Because, I forget the exact details, but the CBI published data last week or the week before about 1.1 million UK workers in the net zero economy, and I think £105 billion in gross value added for the UK economy, but it's not either or. You know, if they were to issue new oil licences, it would compromise net zero commitments, but it wouldn't mean that any of the people in the net zero economy were to lose their jobs. Their earnings currently 11% higher than the current national average, but as Claire Coutinho pointed out, possibly as much as 50% less than what they might expect to earn in the oil sector. Does it work? Does it have traction, this? Does it? I mean, it does in Aberdeen, but beyond?
Well, it does in Aberdeen, and the by-election for Aberdeen South is tomorrow. So if the Conservatives are able to win that, and speaking to people in the party, they feel reasonably confident and reasonably hopeful. Kemi Badenoch has gone a few times to the constituency. She's called it...
Oh, lucky them.
She's called
Seriously,
it...
what would I... Do you think she'd ever come and see me if we were having a by-election?
If you played your cards right.
Oh, it's just be great. It's just so cool.
But she's called
a full list of candidates, as ever, is available at lbc.co.uk. This is due to Stephen Flynn moving into the Scottish Parliament, isn't it, this one? So it is SNP versus...
SNP versus Tories, exactly that.
With a full list of candidates, as ever, available at lbc.co.uk. My inbox is mostly pro-Lammy, I think. Let me find a few examples for you. Almost entirely pro-Lammy, except one. Charles wants to know why on earth they never answer the question about drilling in the pretty sound thrashing from Lammy there. Pathetic performance. Even Kemi would have done better. That's Lauren and Alan. Why does she insist that North Sea gas would somehow make our energy cheap? That's one of those things that's got halfway around the world before the truth has got its trousers on. We'd still be paying for it on the open market wherever it came from. But the bit about jobs is therefore a more salient point to go in on. Lammy is, in football terms, a seasoned pro. It is very weak gruel. Lammy is right. And just trying to find something a bit warmer for Claire Coutinho. Why is Lammy here? Oh no, that's Steph. I think falling into the trap I fell into of thinking that Claire Coutinho was talking about David Lammy when she said, why is he here this week? When if you were watching it closely on a screen, you'd have known that she was pointing at Dan Jarvis. This is weak stuff from Coutinho. And Kate says she really can't land the punchline. Bring back Kemi. Couldn't agree more. Whatever the context, whatever the story, we want more Kemi. Kemi. This is cringeworthy. Why is he here? Because the Prime Minister is at the G7. Oh, mate, OMG, Tories have abandoned any concern about net zero. God, she's even worse than me at telling jokes, says Karen. And finally, Lauren says, oh, Lammy brought receipts. So Kemi will be delighted
Kemi will be delighted. I didn't think Claire Coutinho was that bad, actually.
I don't think I did either.
And it was her first time ever doing Deputy Prime Minister's questions. And
this lass makes Kemi look like Aristotle.
Wow.
Said James. Of course, we don't know what Aristotle would have sounded like because we rely, I think, upon... Don't we rely upon... Oh, no, we do know. I'm getting him mixed up with Socrates. An easy mistake to make. No, she was fine.
I think she was fine. And also, I thought David Lammy, he had a few things that he sort of kept saying, which was stop reading the papers, don't believe everything you say in the papers, and talking about her record, which is, of course, a Labour favourite. But he didn't properly engage with that many of the questions. I actually don't think it was his best performance, and I don't think she was terrible.
I would probably agree with you. Not quite a score draw, but a hard one, narrow victory probably. That's it. We may not see you again. You're heading off on maternity leave on Friday, for which we wish you all the very, very, very best.
Thank you.
Try and get as much sleep as you can before the moment arrives, because you won't be getting any after.
That's what I've heard.
I can confirm. It's coming up, Aggie. It's a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you back here safe and sound. It is 12:30. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Time now for the very latest news headlines with Amelia Cox.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Kids would call it a mashup. We've got a bit of, hopefully we've got a bit of unhinged headline. We've definitely got a missed information on the way. We may even have a clip of honest Bob Jenrick. Truly, I am spoiling you. Shall we begin with the unhinged headline? Yes, we shall.
Unhinged headline.
Dartmoor's ponies don't deserve to die, reports the Daily Telegraph.
Unhinged headline.
But that leads us... Oh, no. Time for honest Bob Jenrick. Tom's earning his money now. Is he going to get all three clips in the right order with me, no doubt, making weird gestures to indicate the fact that I want the last one repeating, but I don't want the last one repeating now. I want the next one playing next. Can anyone bear listening to honest Bob Jenrick's weasel words?
They're going to kill the ponies. The government has come up with a mad plan to slaughter 90% of the wild ponies that graze on Dartmoor. The beautiful ponies that have been there for centuries. Why? Because apparently there's too much grass on Dartmoor and they want to turn it into some kind of rainforest. This is an evil plan and it needs to be stopped.
Honest Bob Jenrick there, auditioning to do the bedtime story on CBeebies. I don't think that's going to go well. Seriously, you'd have thought he'd chosen different material. But also, I think we can confidently state, talking undiluted balderdash. Utter bilge. And everyone's at it. It's probably not fair to single out any individual organisations, because I think the BBC and The Guardian have joined in as well. But if you took even the vaguest interest in this story, or even if you came at it from the point of view of thinking, that sounds highly unlikely, you would have discovered relatively quickly that there is absolutely no plan whatsoever on the horizon. One of the places you could go to find out would be Dartmoor Nature's own website. You could also go to the organisation that stands accused of having introduced this so-called policy, this so-called cull. You would completely ignore the fact, but, well, why am I giving you all the information? We've got a flipping expert in the wings, because this is not only an unhinged headline, cue the clip,
Unhinged headline.
but it's also a...
Missed information.
Thank you, Emily. And thank you, Tom. You could easily have got that wrong. Flipping heck, I was dancing around like, I don't know, I can't think of any dancers at the moment. Fred Astaire I was dancing around like. And Guy Shrubsole is here, the environmental campaigner and author of, most recently, The Lie of the Land and Who Really Cares... Well, The Lie of the Land, Who Really Cares for the Countryside. I smell manure.
Well, hello, James.
Not you, Guy. Nothing personal. You're miles away on a screen in front of me. Metaphorical manure. It's swilling through the studio, Guy. What's going on here?
Well, it's a great shame that it's before the watershed, James, because otherwise I could have given you my one-word summary of this story when I was asked for my opinion on it by Sky News yesterday, which is horse manure.
Thank you.
Or something to that effect. It's categorically untrue. As you said, there is absolutely... no one calling for a pony cull. Natural England, the government's poor, imperiled watchdog on nature that has to deal with this constant assault from the right-wing press, They have absolutely no proposals for any sort of pony cull. They have no powers to mandate a pony cull. They have no desire to have any sort of pony cull. I'm glad you quoted Honest Bob Jenrick, former Tory leadership wannabe and now Reform defector.
That's the thing.
That last line of his, because apparently there's too much grass on Dartmoor and they want to turn it into some kind of rainforest. I kind of wish I could explain to Bob Jenrick that Dartmoor is suffering from all sorts of environmental damage, like overgrazing, like peat drainage, that has led to an explosion in this one invasive species of native grass called purple moorgrass, and that there are tiny fragments of rainforest, temperate rainforest on Dartmoor, and myself and many other campaigners have been calling to restore it for many, many years. But I don't think he'd care, really, because he doesn't actually care about environmental issues. He just wants to jump on a conspiratorial bandwagon here.
Well, you say purple moorgrass. I, with my classical education, I say Molinia caerulea. And is that...
Perfect.
Thank you. Which I believe is something that the very specific mandible conditions of a Dartmoor pony means that they're one of the few herbivores that can actually eat the grass that's causing the problems.
Well, they can. Cattle can also do this.
Okay.
Incredibly well briefed. Cattle can also do this. A lot of the problem that we've got to be clear about this, and underneath this, the great Dartmoor pony cull conspiracy of 2026, there is actually a serious set of issues that are being obscured by all the right-wing bandwagon jumping politicians who spend their entire lives on X, on Elon Musk's hell site, and want to just spread conspiracies about pony culls. There is a serious issue here.
Yes.
And that is that nature on Dartmoor is dying. Nature on Dartmoor is in a terrible, terrible state. One of our greatest national parks. It should be a source of national shame that we have allowed the habitats on Dartmoor to get to such a terrible state. And there's one very important reason why they are in such a state, and that is overgrazing, both historic and currently. And what that's actually led to is the spread of this purple moorgrass, Molinia caerulea, as you so wonderfully put it, into areas where there would previously have been things like heather and other forms of other more richer habitats. Now, some people say, we need to have ponies and cattle to be able to graze out this moorgrass. There's actually a very simple way of getting rid of this. It's to re-wet the peat on Dartmoor. We have to actually restore the other habitats that Dartmoor has lost through all these other reasons why we have got such a degraded state of nature on Dartmoor. We've ended up centuries of drainage of the peat bogs, which has led also to this spread of this moorgrass. And so actually that's one of the ways in which we need to fix the problem. But there's another serious issue here. Sorry, James, I can see you wanting to come in. So
no, I'm not at all. That's just the way my face works.
Well, if I can just also say there's a very serious issue here as well, which is that all farming on Dartmoor is essentially unprofitable unless it is propped up by public taxpayer subsidies. And this is where we really get to the heart of the issue, because all farmers on Dartmoor get millions of pounds in public money in order to keep farming, and that's money from you and I and from all your listeners that we pay that in taxes. And I don't have a problem with money being paid to farmers to do this, but I do have a problem when the farming that's done continues to damage the nature on Dartmoor. And I would much rather that farmers were paid taxpayers' money to restore nature on places like Dartmoor. And that is essentially what Natural England is trying to ask them to do. They don't have any powers to mandate any sort of cull of ponies or any other livestock. The only tool that Natural England have at their disposal is to offer voluntary incentive payments to farmers. They want to keep the money going, but under a new set of schemes that require a reduction in livestock grazing on the moor. And actually, they're now offering farmers new grants which specifically reward keeping ponies and cattle on the moor rather than sheep.
So
We're not hearing that, are we?
It's not just a misinformation, it's the polar opposite of what is being reported. So exactly. because the problems are I mean, the re-wetting of the peat notwithstanding, that the overgrazing is not a consequence of the ponies being there, it's a consequence of there being too many sheep there.
Exactly right. It's a consequence of there being far too many sheep on the moor. Now, look, ponies are, we all love ponies. Ponies are also grazing animals. You can't get away from that fact. So it is kind of perfectly reasonable for Natural England to say, when they're coming up with calculations for, how many livestock you could have on the moor for it to be grazed in a more sustainable way, that they do factor in the 1,000 or so ponies that are on Dartmoor. But they obviously also are very concerned, much more concerned, about the tens of thousands of sheep that have been grazing on Dartmoor for decades. And this is where we get to the heart of the problem, is because some farmers, unfortunately, don't really want to see that change. They don't want to remove the sheep that graze, including on winter, on Dartmoor. And they don't want to remove them. They want to carry on getting paid the same money for old rope. And this is where we get to the heart of the problem, is the intransigence, unfortunately, of some interests when it comes to actually reducing unsustainable grazing on places like Dartmoor.
And it was only relatively recently that the ponies got lumped in with the sheep in the sort of total calculation of how many animals are grazing on Dartmoor. I checked this. I'm not even asking you. You probably know, but I'll tell you. And that was done under the last government when I think Greg Clark was Environment Secretary. So when Kemi Badenoch takes to Twitter to write, "This is total madness from another..." when the magnificent Kemi Badenoch takes to Twitter to write, "This is total madness from another unaccountable quango. The government must overrule Natural England and stop it immediately. Keir Starmer is on his way to making his last acts in office the shameful underfunding of our military and the mass slaughter of Dartmoor ponies." She has done so while ignorant of the fact that the weird little glitch that makes it look as if ponies might be caught up in a cull that they're not going to be caught up in was a consequence of a Conservative Environment Secretary's decision. And she hasn't even bothered to Google Natural England Dartmoor, because if she did, she would read, "Recent media coverage has suggested that Natural England has recommended a cull of ponies on Dartmoor. This is categorically not true, nor is it true to suggest any scheme has been designed with the aim of achieving this." But, Guy Shrubsole, the lie is often halfway around the world before the truth has even got its trousers on.
Exactly right. And I think my concern with all of this is that, as conspiracy theories swirl on social media, as, politicians, irresponsible politicians ramp up the temperature, that you do get bad decisions made, that the government may get cold feet, that Natural England might get its knuckles rapped, that scientific advice might get ignored, that actually farmers won't get these payments that are being offered to them to actually specifically keep ponies and cattle on the moor, and instead you'll continue to have overgrazing on Dartmoor, and nature will continue to die, and we'll all actually end up losing out. And the thing is that I wish that people like Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick actually gave a toss about this stuff, but I fear that they actually don't, and they are just jumping on a bandwagon, and then when all of this is kicking off in the background, they'll have moved on to the next bandwagon.
It's the 10th anniversary of Brexit next week, so I can't help reflecting upon the fact that this is what happens, Guy Shrubsole, when you listen to experts. and here we are. Guy's book, The Lie of the Land, Who Really Cares for the Countryside, is out now, and his next one, I think, will be looking at Chalkland. Is that right?
Ghosts of Chalk Country.
The Ghosts of Chalk Country. What a lovely title. Sounds like a country and western album. It's 12:45. You're listening to James O'Brien. Oh, can we listen to it once more? Should we listen once more to Honest Bob Jenrick's audition for Jackanory, if you're of a certain age, or for the CBeebies bedtime story? So here's Robert Jenrick, Honest Bob, to his mates, if he had any, auditioning for the bedtime story slot on CBeebies.
They're going to kill the ponies. The government has come up with a mad plan to slaughter 90% of the wild ponies that graze on Dartmoor. The beautiful ponies that have been there for centuries. Why? Because apparently there's too much grass on Dartmoor, and they want to turn it into some kind of rainforest. This is an evil plan, and it needs to be stopped.
Funny, isn't it? I mean, it's absolute gibberish from Honest Bob, but I'll tell you what is an evil plan. Painting over the murals of cartoons at a centre where unaccompanied child refugees would be housed upon their arrival in this country. That's a genuinely evil plan. So not only is he lying, he is also forgetting that the most evil plan we've heard in UK politics in the last few years was his.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Down, and most of all, I think I let the ponies down. I should have concluded that misinformation regarding the absolute nonsense being spouted by almost everybody, none of whom have bothered to do the most cursory of research into a so-called cull of ponies on Dartmoor. I should have ended it by saying, what a load of old pony. Shouldn't I? Sorry. And off we go to Makerfield, where there will be a by-election tomorrow. I'm probably going to say, keep count, Tom, will you? I'm probably going to say, what do you reckon, Eleanor? I'm going to say 4 times between now and 1 o'clock. A full list of candidates is available at lbc.co.uk, just to be on the safe side. Natasha Clark is there. Tom Swarbrick is there. I think Emily Maitlis is there. Everybody's there except me. I never get invited anywhere. What's going on, Natasha?
James, I wish you were here. I'm outside Buzz Bingo in Wigan, which looks like it's pumping.
Have you got your dobber? Have you got your dobber?
I don't know what a dobber is. I've never been into a Buzz Bingo. What's a dobber?
A dobber is a special felt tip thing with a big old nib on it that you use to dob out the numbers on your bingo card. I got taught that at Ampleforth.
Well, exactly, as indeed you should, But yes, just about to head over into the constituency of Makerfield, which is just a stone's throw away from Wigan. It's not actually in Wigan itself. But James, we do know this could be a really consequential by-election. That's why everyone's up here. And we'd obviously love for you to join us if you could. Indeed, if Andy Burnham returns to Westminster and decides to challenge the Prime Minister, we know, of course, Keir Starmer has said repeatedly that he's going to fight any challenge. But yesterday I was with Wes Streeting giving his speech, setting out his stall ahead of this crucial by-election. He says if Burnham wins, Starmer must set out his timetable to resign. But again, Wes Streeting refusing to say that if he is going to be the one to trigger a leadership election or not. But he did tell us he had the 81 MPs needed to do that. So the constituents here in Makerfield, 0.1% of the electorate, could have the power to decide the fate of the Prime Minister. And locals, I think, that I spoke to when I was here last week, James, are very aware of that. Some of them want to get out Keir Starmer. Some of them want to get Burnham in. Some of them want to keep reform out. Some of them want to vote reform to give the Prime Minister a kicking. So many different sort of aspects to take in here. Here was a bit of a flavour of some of the thoughts of locals here in Makerfield.
Reform, yeah. UK, definitely.
Yeah, why do you think that?
Why do I think that?
Yeah,
because they care about British people. They want to do well for this country, especially look after the borders.
Why do you want to be voting for Andy Burnham?
Well, he's done a lot for Lee. He did the Marina, he did the Lee Sports Village, he's done a lot in Manchester. I want somebody who can represent Ashton, who's got pedigree and what we can trust.
Restore Britain.
Oh yeah, why do you think that?
Well, we want our country back.
Yeah?
What it was, because we've had nothing done no matter who we vote for.
Yeah.
They promise you the earth and we get nothing.
And James, I also spoke with the Labour MP John Trickett, who was out campaigning for Andy Burnham.
And I find people in the area saying, actually, we're quite pleased that we're going to be the centre of attention. And hopefully if we get him into Parliament and maybe even to be Prime Minister one day, you know, it brings a lot of attention and pride to our area. So we're having to, it's street by street, house by house, area by area. It's one of those fights that you have to fight hard. You have to convince people that there's a reason for all this. And I'll tell you what, the most important thing for me, being a northerner, is that North is going to speak for Britain.
And James, after a little bit of investigating, I did track down the Reform candidate Robert Kenyon, who described some of his previous comments being dredged up as a smear campaign.
I think I'm ready to draw a line. I've answered the questions numerous times now, so...
Is it coming up on the doorstep for you at all? Or everyone
not really, no.
willing to put it behind you?
Well, the only time it's ever come up on the doorstep is when people have said, don't take any notice,
Yeah.
but, you know, it's just a smear campaign.
And lots of issues, different issues, James, coming up amongst the people I spoke to. Pensions, immigration, the economy, local jobs, all of them featured. A lot of them didn't like Keir Starmer, but a lot of them were keen on the idea of a Northern Prime Minister. Now, the polling so far, obviously, it's very limited because it's a constituency polling, so it usually only includes around 500 people or so. Polling for Opinion, which we've done with them for LBC, has seen Labour getting around 46% of the vote. Reform currently on around 41%. Restore Britain on around 7%. So there is the prospect, and lots of people I'm speaking to say that, you know, they think Andy Burnham is doing very, very well here. Reform potentially trying to keep up with them, but maybe, just maybe, they might be squeezed out by the Restore Party, who I think are taking a bit of those votes on the right, James.
What do we know about the demographics of the constituency? If the Labour were to win, it doesn't lend itself to Farage's claims about family vote, whatever the nonsense was he came out after Gorton and Denton that turned out to be complete hogwash. Is it a traditional left-leaning constituency? Is it diverse? Does it have areas of multiculturalism, or is it a predominantly white area?
It's predominantly white area. It's around sort of 95% white, according to the census reports that I was looking at. So it's pretty ethnically non-diverse here. It's a slightly in-between area, so between Wigan, Manchester, Liverpool, and there's no like sort of one main area. I think most of the time I spent was in Ashton. It's one of the places with a main high street, around sort of 70 to 100,000 people voting in there. And yes, it is a predominantly Labour area. It's been Labour since around 1983 when it was first created. And Labour previously had a majority of around 6,000. Josh Simons was the MP that gave up his seat for Andy Burnham. He's pretty well liked amongst the people I spoke to, but obviously James, Reform, we know, doing really well in these sort of previously Brexity areas. Lots of people feeling that Labour aren't doing enough for them, feeling left behind. Reform got more than 50% of the vote in the local elections just a couple of weeks ago. So this very much is like prime Nigel Farage Reform territory, but it does seem, at least according to the people I've spoken to, that brand Andy Burnham is really holding up the Labour vote here.
Is Farage around? Is he there?
I haven't seen him. He has been up to the constituency 2 or 3 times, so he's been around and about. He did a press conference. Liam Gotting, our reporter in the Northwest, managed to put a question to him. I haven't seen him yet.
Okay. Natasha Clark, stay safe, and a safe journey home. Live there from Makerfield, where a full list of the candidates is available at lbc.co.uk. Just to clarify one of the things you heard in one of those clips, a smear campaign traditionally involves misinformation or lies or misrepresentations designed to malign somebody's reputation. It doesn't involve repeating back to people things that they have previously said or posted on social media. That's called journalism. Also, I should share with you the full list of candidates that are standing in the other by-election tomorrow in Aberdeen South. And they are as follows: Nurul Haq Ali from the Scottish Labour Party, David Ballantyne from the Alliance for Democracy and Freedom, or the ADF, Jorg Shelton-Eckstein from the Scottish Greens, Joe Hart from Reform UK, Douglas Lumsden from the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party, Mel Sullivan from the Scottish Liberal Democrats, and Richard Gordon-Thompson from the Scottish National Party. So two by-elections unfolding in the United Kingdom tomorrow. And do you know what that means? Can you remember what that means? Are you familiar with the most ludicrous anomaly in British electoral law? Yes, you are. It means we can't talk about politics tomorrow at all, in any way, shape or form, until midnight, which we generally managed to do without too much difficulty, although there was that one year where I got an Ofcom complaint upheld, but we never ever mention that. We pretend that never happened and gloss over it seamlessly. It also means mystery hour. It's actually what mystery hour was invented for. But rarely is it more welcome than on a day when we're not actually allowed to talk about politics, both nationally and obviously locally. I would remind you that Tom Swarbrick will be broadcasting live from the constituency from 4 o'clock today, and therefore walking an even tauter tightrope than the one the rest of us walk when we talk about things by-election related. We will not, however, be talking about any of it tomorrow. Do you know why that rule is in place?
I don't think it's ludicrous.
Do you not?
No, I don't. I mean,
Shall we have a heated debate?
Let's have a heated debate. I think I can see why it came in when it came in.
Yeah, so
when
can I.
Our sources of news were fairly homogenous, weren't they?
Yes.
As in the numbers of them were very great,
yes.
rather than being homogenous. In broadcast terms, I mean, I wonder whether in the splintered broadcast audio...
makes sense. But newspapers can literally put Vote X on their front page, and we can't even say so-and-so looked like winning tomorrow. That's the bit I find ludicrous, is the comparison with what the newspapers can do.
Is it the amplification?
I guess so.
But newspapers depends on their circulation, doesn't it? How amplified the message is.
Yeah, but I'm told that not everyone is listening to us.
believe it.
Fake news.
Can't believe it.
Fake news.
If this isn't an Andy Murray wins Wimbledon moment, I don't know what is.
I couldn't agree more. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free global player or the LBC app, where you can also stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinions. You can listen to a range of podcasts, including James O'Brien Daily, the best bits from my LBC show every day, and, of course, full disclosure. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Tom Swarbrick with you, live from Makerfield at 4 o'clock today. But now it's time for Sheila Fogarty.
It's possible we'll hear from him sooner than 4 o'clock as well, in conversation with moi. Thank you very much, James.
James O'Brien on LBC.